what this would look like and what it meant. So we've basically bought those stories. Now they're happening, and we're waiting for our next catalyst to move in either direction, which kind of explains why the market's really gone nowhere so far this week.
And we still have a pandemic that we have to still get through this next wave, Gina.
Yeah, well, there is that still, Carol. You know, I'm trying not to talk about the pandemic so much. It's pretty depressing in the holiday season, but we'll go there.
I said, listen, I kicked off the show saying I'm moody. I just am. It's just so hard, all those things. And I feel for the people who are on the front lines working their butts off, and people who've lost ones. It's just been that kind of a heavy year, Tim.
Yeah, it really has been. And I think I still wonder, as a lot of people do, why we don't see more of the year reflected in the way that investors are thinking. We talk a lot about this disconnect between Main Street and Wall Street, but it's been a really good few months for equity investors. What gives?
Right. But Mike McKee, when we look at the economic side of it, it's a reminder that, man, we've got a long way to go.
We do have a long way to go. When you look at the way the labor market is performing, starting to deteriorate significantly.
Yeah.
We get jobless claims tomorrow, by the way, or day early because of the holidays. And you look at the slowdown we have seen in spending, it's clear that the economy is starting to pause again. And that's why I want to call it the support package, not a stimulus package, but the support package is so important because it's going to come late. You don't want to say just at the right time, but we wouldn't want to go much longer without much help for those who are, shall we say, not making their money off the stock market.
So, Mike, does that raise the question that we're certainly going to need something else in 2021?
Most economists would say we are. The problem is that we're still in the grip of the pandemic, and the virus caseload is exploding across the country, and that means that more and more people are going to lose their jobs. It was pointed out to me this morning is California is one of the biggest economies in the world. It would be the top 10 if it were its own country, and that state's all but shut down.
Yeah.
So you're really going to have a hit to growth in the United States as the fourth quarter moves into the first quarter. And remember, on a seasonal basis, the first quarter is generally kind of slow. Add in any snowstorms we might get or things like that, and we could have real problems. So, yes, a lot of people expect the Biden administration to have to come back to Congress.
Yeah, Gina, I mean, is there a point, Gina, when we get into 2021 that you feel confident enough or comfortable enough to maybe start rethinking maybe your expectations for the year? I'm just curious what your thinking is in terms of information that's out there and how you kind of figure out what kind of equity market we have in 2021.
Yeah, I think, you know, to answer the earlier question quickly, I do think that the other thing we talked about all summer was what was going to happen in the winter, right?
Yep,
and so you have to keep in mind that a materially strong wave was already embedded into the equity investors' thought process as early as June or July. We've all been thinking about this dark winter coming. It's here now, which explains why the market has been somewhat resilient, right? Most investors knew it was happening. Nobody had predicted it would be materially worse than the first wave, but that's something to consider, is the psychology and what's embedded in prices is not always what you think. But when we think about 2021, I think there are a number of critical issues to consider. The first is we are going to come right back into work and be faced with the results of the Georgia elections.
Right.
The re-runoff in Georgia. We may actually have the blue wave that the market tried to price in October, then priced out with the election. That could create a significant degree of volatility. If we do get this blue wave, then we really have to think about, again, are we going to get infrastructure? Are we going to have tax reforms? Or if all those issues suddenly come back? So the first week of January is going to be really critical.
Right.
Beyond that, I think you have to sort of scoot into how fast we can get virus vaccine disseminated, how fast we can get the population inoculated to move into back to school is going to be a really critical issue because there is an understanding or embedded psychology around the vaccine really getting distributed through the first half and growth starting to recover in the second half of the year. And then if that does happen, the third risk I think you want to follow is the Fed.
Yeah.
Almost everybody thinks the Fed's just going to be as easy as pie right through 2023. And that kind of embedded assumption is really risky, especially if
Right.
continues to surprise on the upside if we can get the vaccine disseminated, distributed relatively quickly.
Yeah.
And the equity market is correct, and that is that
Right.
we are going to see growth in 2021.
All right. Buck up, buckaroo, Gina. I can hear it in your voice, man. Who's got the kids, though, and who's on the streets? I just want to know. Is it you, Gina, or is it you, Mike? McKee, are you in an airport?
House for a change. For a very
I'm
big
on a
change, I'm in a
street
quiet
corner.
house.
And where are you, Mike?
I'm on a street corner talking to you
Oh, okay.
as I watch the traffic go by. So it's not kids, it's taxi drivers.
Well, we appreciate we appreciate all of it from both of you. Thank you so much. Take care, guys. And if we don't talk to you before the end of the year, have a good holiday and a happy new year. Gina Martin-Adams, Chief Equity Strategist at Bloomberg Intelligence, and Mike McKee on a street corner.
Hey, it's good to hear the economic activity in the background, isn't it?
It's like Danny Blanchflower of Dartmouth, walkabout. Like you walk around and you kind of feel what's going on in the economy.
Sometimes when you're on the radio, you just got to take a walk.
You just got to take a walk. All right, let's do quickly the Business Week Bite of the Day. One number that tells us a lot. Today's number, folks, it's 0. City Winery, a popular Manhattan wine and music venue, been there, is offering free COVID-19 tests to customers who buy a case of wine. And depending on the results, consumers can then choose to pop open a bottle in celebration or to drown out their zeros. That sounds like a plan.
You didn't even need a free COVID test for me to entice me to go there. I'll do it.
So easy, so easy. All right, let's get to world and national news. For that, over to Ann Cates in D.C. Hey, Ann.
Hey, thanks and good afternoon. The nation's top infectious disease expert says the new strain of the coronavirus found in the UK may already be in the United States. Dr. Anthony Fauci tells Good Morning America that there really is light at the end of the tunnel if Americans follow long-running guidelines.
Please do what I suggested for Thanksgiving. We don't want to cancel Christmas, but you have to tone down plans, try to minimize travel, and try to avoid large congregations of people indoors. You know, the dinners that have 20, 25 people.
Out of more than 270,000 doses of Pfizer's COVID-19 vaccine, 6 people had allergic reactions. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention has come up with guidelines for who should not get the shot. Bloomberg's Amy Morris reports from Washington.
Turns out most people can get the vaccine. If you get the first dose and you have a severe reaction, you shouldn't get the second dose. Researchers say shellfish and egg allergies are not likely concerns, and neither are allergies to latex, penicillin, or other medications. If you have severe allergies that require you to carry an EpiPen, talk to your doctor before getting the vaccine. The CDC says even if you've had reactions to vaccines in the past, you should still get the shot. In Washington, I'm Amy Morris, Bloomberg Radio.
President-elect Joe Biden will speak this afternoon from Wilmington, Delaware, as the nation deals with a COVID-19 surge that's casting a shadow over the Christmas holiday this week. Biden will discuss the $900 billion coronavirus aid bill passed by Congress. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Bloomberg Quick Take, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Ann Cates. This is Bloomberg.
All right, Ann, really appreciate that. You are listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Carol Master, along with Bloomberg Quick Takes, Tim Stenovic, and a lot of virus stories once again, talking about the new, I guess it isn't a new strain. I think what everybody's saying is kind of it's a variant. And we need to kind of be very specific in terms of how we describe it. But what we're reading is that this variant that emerged in the UK, possibly already in the US, Germany, France, and Switzerland, according to officials in those countries.
How could it not be, Carol?
I agree. Because there's been movement.
If there's one thing that we've learned this year about the pandemic, it is in places before you know it's there.
Right. And we found that out, right, after kind of many months. I want to say it was just a couple months ago where we were like, well, it was actually in the U.S. before everybody realized it. So, listen, this is the world we're facing, we're fighting. From what we seem to read so far and hear is that the vaccines that are coming out seem to cover this variant.
Right.
And that's good.
It's good. That's what we know right now. Obviously, there needs to be more clinical trials and studies to actually prove it. But the concern with this variant is that it's more contagious, and that's why we are seeing extended lockdown measures in the UK. And the reason they found this is because parts of London, where they're seeing a resurgence or a surge in the virus, overwhelming majority has this strain.
Right. Very contagious is what they're saying. In the meantime, we continue to see well-known individuals like Dr. Anthony Fauci get the vaccine.
And he got the newest vaccine too, the Moderna vaccine.
Would that impact you?
Which one I would take?
Yeah.
Just whichever one I can get, Carol. Like now, yesterday, last week, I will take it.
I was talking to or texting with a friend, and she was saying, "Stick me everywhere."
If it's good enough for Fauci, it's good enough for me.
In the meantime, listen, the numbers that we're seeing: global cases 77.6 million, deaths surpassing 1.7 million. I mean, the numbers are just staggering, and
Yeah,
we know healthcare system is being maxed out.
We also learned that the South Carolina governor has tested positive for the virus. We learned that earlier today.
So officials continuing. All right, we're going to get an update on the vaccine and the virus in just a moment, right here on Bloomberg Business Week. You are listening to Bloomberg Radio.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and at Bloomberg Quick Take. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. Stocks are trading mix. The S&P fluctuating between gains and losses as optimism over a COVID-19 relief bill being tempered by the emergence of a new variant of the virus and a slew of lockdowns and travel curbs to contain it. S&P being led lower by communication services, consumer discretionary and industrial sectors. Right now, the S&P is little change, down by 1 point. The Dow down 123 points, down 0.4%. NASDAQ up 55 for NASDAQ, a gain there of 0.4%. 10-year up 430 seconds, 10-year yield 0.91%. Gold down $14 the ounce, a drop now of 0.8% to $18.62. Crude slumping as a result of lower global demand. West Texas Intermediate down 1.5%, 47.23 a barrel. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie, thank you so much. Really appreciate that update. And, talking a little bit about what we're seeing in the trade, it does feel like investors a little exhausted, a little, okay, we finally got some things done, but it's just a reminder that we're still, especially as we see the continuation of the virus headlines, concerns about the economy. I mean, this stuff's going to weigh on us for a little while, Tim.
Yeah, it really will. And I think the big question is, what do the lockdowns look like post-holiday, right? And if we look at what's happening in California, as we heard earlier in our show from Mike and Gina, the idea that such a big economy is to such an extent locked down has serious economic consequences. And yes, it's supposed to be targeted, but the majority of Californians are facing at-home orders right now. So how does that affect spending? Right. Who is allowed to go out? Who's not allowed to go out? And there are serious economic consequences of that, especially if those lockdowns then move to other parts of the country.
It's huge. It's huge. And those economic consequences will not necessarily show up in data points until we're kind of like a month later. And so, but we will certainly feel it. Let's, though, get a little bit more on the virus and vaccine, because we have a really great guest with us. It is Dr. Valerie Montgomery Rice. She's president and dean of the Morehouse School of Medicine. She's the first woman to lead the medical institution, and she joins us on the phone in Atlanta. She is also got the whole school does a new multi-million-dollar initiative to increase the number of Black physicians nationwide, which I think is a really, really important program. We're going to talk about that in just a moment. Dr. Montgomery Rice, so nice to have you here with Tim and myself on Bloomberg. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Carol. Appreciate it.
We're going to get into that program because I think it's really important going forward, especially with everything that's been going on this year. And we're seeing a lot of the Black population concerned about maybe taking the vaccine. But when you look at the virus and vaccine overall right now, tell me some of the main points that stick out with you. Is it the mutation? Is it the rise in cases, the wave again? What is it that really kind of you think our listeners need to pay attention to?
Well, first of all, I want to say I'm glad you're having this conversation. Is that first of all, the vaccine is not going to take care of everything for us. That we still have to continue these public health initiatives of washing our hands, wearing our mask, and watching our distance. With that being said, I am trying to move the conversation from one of vaccine hesitancy of vaccine acceptance. What we've seen is science at great work here. We know that we now have something that has been shown to be 94 to 95% effective in preventing the disease. That doesn't mean you don't get infected. What it means, though, when you have the vaccine in place, it is going to it's going to produce antibodies that are going to gobble up that virus so that you will not get ill. And so we still have more to know, but what we really do know is that it's safe. And it's been shown to be very effective at that. So when your turn comes up, we want people to actually be ready to accept the vaccine because that is one of the ways that we can mitigate the ravages of this disease, of this illness, of this sickness that is really taking over our country right now.
Well, Dr. Rice, you are one of the very few people who actually has been able to get the first dose of this vaccine. You got it last week on CNN with Dr. Sanjay Gupta. I imagine you took the Pfizer-BioNTech one?
Yes, I got the Pfizer one, and I'm a person who, even though I'm a surgeon, I don't like needles.
Join the club. I'm not a surgeon, but I don't like needles.
I still wins.
It wasn't painful at all. It was less painful than the flu vaccine.
Okay. How did it feel afterward?
Totally fine. And so, you go onto, you sign up for this app and called VTAC, or Be Safe, that's what it is. And every day I've been answering questions. I had a little bit of arm soreness. I haven't had any headaches, any nausea, any fatigue, or anything. And so I felt really good. And
that's good to hear, because even after the flu shot, I get a sore arm.
You do get a
Yeah.
Was it cold going in?
A bit of a sore arm, but it's not as sore to me as it is when I have the flu vaccine. I get the flu vaccine every year, of course.
Was it cold going in?
Not at all.
Okay.
I felt nothing. I mean, I was like, when you saw it on air, I was like, okay, that's it. I was expecting a lot more. I think the needle is bigger than the solution.
Yeah, the needle looks kind of big. I'm going to look away. To be quite honest.
No, don't look, okay? And it's over.
Doctor's orders, okay,
Yeah.
Carol?
I mean, go with someone who knows how to give a shot, right? So you were like, okay, have you given a shot before? We wanted to make sure of that.
Well,
but no, in all seriousness, here is an opportunity, you all, and I know people get concerned about warp speed.
Yeah.
Warp speed does not mean that there were any steps skipped. And I've had the privilege, you all, of looking at the data, phase 0, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 data, because I'm on one of the NIH panels, and we've seen that data. And now that Moderna and Pfizer have both released their phase 3 data, I've looked very intentionally at that. And so I can tell you the safety profile, it really did show that it was equally effective regardless of your race, regardless of your gender, regardless of your age, and regardless of whether or not you were obese. And that made a big difference to me to saying, okay, they really did have great enrollment of people in the diversity in these trials.
Well, and just got about 40 seconds, and then we'll come back and talk some more. I am curious, what are some of the dominant conversations you're having at Morehouse, about COVID-19 right now? Just quickly, and then we'll come back.
Yeah, so the main dominant conversation was, we did have originally 30% of our doctors or healthcare providers who were hesitant. That has decreased. We probably have vaccinated over 200 people now, 200 of our healthcare professionals. So that's been the biggest conversation. Okay, yes, we have the historical context of what has happened with blacks in clinical trials, et cetera, but that's not where we are now, you all. We're at a different phase in this country.
We're going to continue with this conversation. That's a great point to kind of launch us off in the second block with Dr. Valerie Montgomery Rice. We'll get back to her in just a second. She's president at Morehouse School of Medicine on the phone from Atlanta. I loved asking her all those specifics because I've been watching the needles.
This is great. I got to ask all the questions I wanted to know about the vaccine and getting it.
Just
and guess
I'm
what?
ready.
I still really want to get it.
I know you do. You want to be poked like everywhere.
Yes.
You're like the friend I was talking to. All right, you're listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Carol Massar along with Tim Stenovic, and you are listening to Bloomberg Radio.
Broadcasting live to New York, Bloomberg 1130. To Washington, D.C., Bloomberg 99.1. To Boston, Bloomberg 106.1. To San Francisco, Bloomberg 960. To the country, Sirius XM Channel 119. And around the globe, the Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Business Week.
All right, you are listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Carol Massar along with Tim Stanovic of Bloomberg Quick Take. Coming up, we're going to continue with Dr. Valerie Montgomery Rice, president of Morehouse School of Medicine. This is a great conversation, and I want to get into a program that they are doing to really help cultivate Black doctors.
Yeah, I'm eager to hear about it. Such a small number every year of students going to medical school are Black.
So important to kind of really get those numbers up. So we'll get into that in just a moment, get back to her. Let's get back to Charlie Pellet. Hey, where do you want to start?
Right now, let's begin with the broad picture for the U.S. equity market. We've got the S&P trading lower. Tesla in the S&P, second day. Tesla down for a second day, dropping 2.6%. S&P lower, little change though right now, down by 1 point. The Dow down 131 points, down 0.4%. NASDAQ is up 58 points at a record, trading higher now by 0.5%. Stocks mixed. Optimism over a COVID-19 relief bill being tempered by the emergence of a new variant of the virus, along with a slew of lockdowns and travel curbs to contain it. 10-year up 5/30 seconds. 10-year yield 0.91%. We've got gold down 0.7%. 18.63 the ounce. Crude West Texas Intermediate down 2.2% right now. 46.92 a barrel. The U.S. government is accusing Walmart of fueling a nationwide opioid crisis by ignoring warnings from its own pharmacists that the chain was not properly screening prescriptions for painkillers in violation of federal regulations. Walmart shares down 1.4%. Pfizer's partner BioNTech is exploring options to boost capacity, and its chief executive officer says the company's vaccine will probably work against the new virus strain that has emerged in the United Kingdom. Dr. Amish Adalja is senior scholar at the Johns Hopkins Center for Health Security, and he says the new strain does not change anything in the strategy to curb it.
There's no evidence that this is going to decrease the efficacy of the vaccines, and they're doing studies right now, Moderna and Pfizer, to see whether or not their vaccine is robust against this. I think that it's going to prove to be so. Vaccines induce a whole host of different antibodies, and it's not just one type of mutation. It takes a while to be able to evade a vaccine. So I don't think that this changes anything, although there is a lot of concern and we need to get some answers on it. We still should not panic about it.
The Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health is supported by Michael R. Bloomberg, founder of Bloomberg LP and Bloomberg Philanthropies. Among some of the vaccine names, Pfizer down today by 2%, BioNTech dropping by 8.1%, AstraZeneca, the ADR is down 2.2%, Moderna plunging by 10%. Recapping stocks mixed, S&P down a point, little changed. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie, thank you so much. I want to get right back to our guest, Dr. Valerie Montgomery Rice, President and Dean of Morehouse School of Medicine. She joins us on the phone from Atlanta, still there. And Dr. Rice, you shared with us and your team shared us some research and some information about how studies show that Black patients have better outcomes when treated by Black doctors. I get that. I have a lot of women doctors because I just feel more comfortable addressing things and talking about things. So you guys at Morehouse have instituted a program to address that, and that is a multi-million-dollar initiative to increase the number of Black physicians nationwide. Talk to us about that program and why you're doing it, a little bit more about why you're doing that.
Thank you, Carol.
Sure.
So, the dual pandemics of COVID-19 and racial injustice really magnified for us sort of the health disparities that were impacting the Black community. And what we recognized a long time ago when we were founded, that in order to ensure that you have the highest level of compliance and cultural competence, there needs to be a shared governance between the patient and the provider, right? And so we have been working to ensure that there's representation of underrepresented minorities who care for patients from different communities. Right now, Black clinicians only comprise about 5% of the physician workforce and 7% of all medical students. As we have been continuing to grow and have impact, Morehouse School of Medicine is partnering with Common Spirit. We recognize we had a shared commitment to the creation and advancement of health equity, particularly in that of underserved communities. As you may know, Common Spirit is the largest not-for-profit health system in the country. They're found in 21 states. They have over 140 hospitals. And because of this shared commitment, we have decided to partner together over the next 10 years through a $100 million initiative where we're going to address the underlying disparities, but that is going to primarily focus initially on the underrepresentation of Black clinicians. So when you look 5 to 7 years from now, you're going to see 5 new regional medical schools with Morehouse School of Medicine and Common Spirit name on them, allowing Morehouse School of Medicine to double its class size from 100 to 200. And then you're going to see 10 new residency training programs across the country. So we believe we're going to triple the number of Black residents who graduate from a residency training program and go out and practice in the community.
How early does this have to start in somebody's career? And the reason I ask is because when I think about my friends who are doctors, these are people who've wanted to be doctors since they were kids. So is it with this partnership, with this initiative, how early are you working with potential students?
So the other great thing that Morehouse School of Medicine has a lot of experience with is pipeline programs, right? So we adopted an elementary school here in Atlanta called Tuskegee Airmen Global Academy, a K through 5. Now, all we're trying to do there with those 600 students is engage them so they get to see us in white coats. They get to come to the school, etc. We're planting the seeds of what's possible. And then we get very serious with our high school and our college students where we're actually giving them research experience, hands-on experiences. We're going to duplicate several of those programs in the communities near the regions where we have identified with Common Spirit, because that's what we do in the state of Georgia. We have a track record in the state of Georgia, you all. We go out and we recruit from rural and underserved communities. 65% of our students go back and practice in an underserved community. 65 to 70% of them either choose primary care or a critical core specialty. And we believe it's because we have these pipeline programs and we give them experiences doing medical school in those communities where they're most likely interested in practicing.
Well, and I think this is so important because we talk about the inequities, the gaps that are in our society, and we think about people who live in some of the rural areas, and it often tends to be minorities, it tends to be Black Americans, and they are underserved, certainly by the medical community. And we've seen that laid bare as a result of COVID-19. Dr. Rice, keep us up to date on the work that you guys are doing. We'd love to hear more as this program progresses. Dr. Valerie Montgomery Rice, she is president at Morehouse School of Medicine, joining us on the phone from Atlanta. Listen, pipeline. Like, you have to reach out. And the idea that they're going to elementary schools, Tim, is just impressive.
Yeah, it's great. And it's incredible. $100 million, we're going to see it play out over the next few years. And we're going to already see differences within 5 to 7 years.
And we were talking actually at home because apparently because of Dr. Fauci and others that you're seeing the number of applicants applying to medical school are up overall. But this is a way of getting minorities, Black Americans specifically, also applying to
it's a fantastic
schools.
Program. We've got to get Dr. Rice back on the show.
All right. Really great. And check her out on our podcast feed. You can download that a little bit later on. Right now, we do want to get another check on world and national news. For that, it's over to Ann Cates, in D.C. Hey, Ann.
Hi, thank you. Good afternoon. 2020 will go down as the deadliest year in U.S. history, with deaths topping 3 million for the first time. It's due mainly to the coronavirus pandemic that has already killed more than 320,000 Americans and counting. The United States death toll will be higher this year by at least 400,000 compared to 2019, and that would be an increase of 15% or more. There are more than 18 million confirmed cases of the coronavirus in the U.S. The nation's top infectious disease expert estimates that most Americans will have access to the new COVID-19 vaccines by midsummer. Dr. Anthony Fauci, appearing on Good Morning America, says that in the meantime, there's one simple thing everyone can do.
If you look at the map of the United States of the increase in cases, it's really quite troublesome. So we've got to just buckle down and everybody adhere to the public health measures, which include the wearing of masks.
The incoming Biden administration is already positioning itself to ensure that China and countries that do business with China feel the pressure. Bloomberg's Amy Morris reports.
The European Union wants the comprehensive agreement on investment to open up China's market. The critics say it would actually reward China with preferential access to European markets without holding Beijing accountable for forced labor or crushed dissent. The deadline for a deal is the end of this year. Joe Biden's national security advisor, Jake Sullivan, now urging, quote, early consultation with our European partners about China's economic practices. In Washington, I'm Amy Morris, Bloomberg Radio.
Global news 24 hours a day and on Bloomberg Quick Take, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Ann Cates. This is Bloomberg.
All right, Anne, thank you so much. You're listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Carol Massar along with Tim Stenovic. As we both are going to put this out, we are not accountants, but this story definitely has caught our attention and is definitely catching the attention of Bloomberg users. It's from our Bloomberg Law team, and it's talking about how New York is among the high-tax states resuming workarounds on a SALT cap. We're talking about those state and local taxes.
Yeah, and the issue is in the 2018 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, the President Trump's tax plan, look, I think it's fair to say he really penalized a lot of the blue states. And interestingly enough, Carol, I think this is one area where you actually see bipartisan support from local Democrats and local Republicans. You don't necessarily see it on Capitol Hill, but when you talk about the SALT deductions and those being removed, there is agreement in one thing, that this has got to go.
Yeah, exactly. And so a half dozen states from New York to California, they are slated next year to take up workarounds to the cap following IRS approval last month of these tax mechanisms that 7 states have in place for pass-through businesses like partnerships and S corporations. Listen, this is what drives me crazy about tax policy or tax laws. You put them into effect and then people figure out the workarounds.
This is no exception.
But it's I don't know if it's a good thing.
Well, in this case, maybe it is. I mean, we're speaking from coming from,
Blue states
with, exactly, that were disproportionately affected. I mean, areas like New York City, New York State, New Jersey, Connecticut, absolutely affected by this, more so than other areas in the country. California, very affected by this, too.
This is a bigger conversation. I was having it with someone earlier here at Bloomberg, but just this whole idea that, unfortunately, even like when we look at the federal relief program that's coming out, I mean, if you live in California, you live on the East Coast, you live in the New York metro area, your math, if you will, is just so different in terms of what it costs to live here, what it costs in terms of education, just in general. And so something like this is a big deal.
Yeah, it's no wonder that it's among the most read on the terminal today, because it affects a lot of the people who are looking at these articles.
And we'll see that depending on the outcome of maybe what happens in Georgia specifically, whether or not this gets picked up again and we see some kind of revision in terms of that cap. Personally, I'm kind of all for it.
Yeah, same.
Let's raise it. This is Bloomberg.
markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and at Bloomberg Quick Take. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. Stocks are mixed as optimism over a COVID-19 relief bill is being tempered by the emergence of a new variant of the virus. Right now, we have got the Dow Jones Industrial Average trading close to session lows, down 164 points, down about 0.6%. The S&P down now by 5, a drop there of 0.1%. NASDAQ up 47, a gain for NASDAQ of just about 0.4%. Could see a record today from the NASDAQ Composite Index, but the Dow lower, being led lower by Walgreen Boots Alliance, Amgen, and Goldman Sachs. The 10-year up 4/32, 10-year yield 0.91%. Gold down 0.8%, 18.61 the ounce, and West Texas Intermediate crude tumbling now by 2.3%, 46.89 a barrel. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Got it, Charlie. Thank you so much. You're listening to Bloomberg Business Week. I'm Carol Massar, along with Bloomberg Quick Take anchor Tim Stenovic. We're in our Interactive Brokers studio. So this week, in the upcoming new issue of Bloomberg Business Week, Bloomberg Economics editor Peter Coy gives us something to think about, as he always does, about when it comes to a company's responsibility to multiple stakeholders and taking into account ESG factors in business and investing decisions. Bottom line, there's a backlash against prioritizing anything other than profits. So let's bring in Peter. Love this story. He joins us on the phone in New Jersey. Hey, Peter Coy, nice to have you here with Tim and myself.
Yes.
This is a really thoughtful deep dive here, kiddo.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah. It's a tough issue.
It is.
ESG, obviously environmental, social governance, really coming on strong, as we know. More and more funds are being managed according to ESG principles. And then there is this backlash, which I talk about, which instigated in some cases by business, but then being carried out by the Trump administration in its waning days.
What does this backlash look like?
Well, there's 3 agencies that are involved in this. The Labor Department, which oversees pension funds, is trying to restrict the ability of the pension fund trustees to consider anything other than the welfare, and by that I mean the financial welfare of the pensioners when they're making decisions about where to put money. The Securities and Exchange Commission is looking at what to do about the proxy advisory firms and trying to force them to have to approach companies at the same time that they give advice to shareholders about how to vote their proxies.
Hey,
and finally,
Peter,
the office, yeah?
Peter, forgive me. Hang on for a second. President-elect Joe Biden making some comments. So if you can sit tight
Okay.
for a second, we're going to head to Delaware. Here's President-elect Joe Biden.
Economic crisis calls for racial justice, historic and punishing wildfires and storms. So this season of reflection carries a much deeper meaning than it usually does. Over 320,000 lives lost to this virus. And Jill and I send our prayers, as I'm sure all of you do, to all who are facing this dark winter with an empty seat at the dinner table where a loved one used to sit and talk and laugh and reminisce. Our hearts go out to all of you who have fallen on hard times, through no fault of your own, I might add. Unable to sleep at night, weighed down with the worry of what tomorrow will bring for you and for your family. We're especially grateful for the healthcare workers on the front lines, the scientists, the researchers, the clinical trial participants on the front lines of the vaccine who deserve our thanks and who delivered us scientific breakthrough. And for all of you who have deployed family members in the military, we know what it's like. We know what that experience is like, how difficult it can be, especially at this time of the year. Our family knows your sacrifice, and our hearts are always with you. But keep the faith. Throughout this year, we had to forego many of our favorite holiday traditions we have as families, as communities, and as a country. For the Bidens, we usually have 20 to 25 family members over for Christmas dinner, and then the immediate family, 14 of our kids and grandkids and their spouses for coming down the stairs on Christmas morning, but not this year. Like we did over Thanksgiving, we all have to care enough for each other that we have to stay apart just a little bit longer. I know it's hard. We have a long way to go, but we're grateful that we've got the vaccine. And yesterday, in an effort to instill some confidence in the vaccine, I had my shot administered in public. And I got a chance to thank all those nurses and docs at Christiana Hospital for what they've been putting up with and doing for so long. I look forward to the second shot, and I have absolute confidence in the vaccine. But we're in short supply. Taking the vaccine from a vial into the arm of millions of Americans is one of the biggest operational challenges the United States has ever faced. We're 300 million people. And we're going to take many more months for that to happen. In the meantime, this pandemic rages on. Experts say things are going to get worse before they get better, notwithstanding the fact we have the vaccine. As you all know, we're averaging a death rate of close to 3,000 people a day. That means we're going to lose tens of thousands of more lives in the months to come. And the vaccine won't be able to stop that. So we'll still have to remain vigilant. We need everyone to mask up, stay socially distanced, avoid large gatherings, particularly inside. We need to work in a bipartisan way. That's the only way we're going to get through this in tough times. And we have our first hint and glimpse of bipartisanship. I applaud the Congress, their economic relief package that included funding for vaccine distribution, much needed temporary relief for workers, families, and small businesses. In this election, the American people made it clear they want us to reach across the aisle and work together on matters of national concern to get something done. And I believe that to be the case from the very beginning of my campaign, and I'm happy to see members of Congress heeding that message as well from their own constituents. Leaders in both House and Senate, both parties, deserve credit for making the hard compromises to get this done. But like all compromises, it's far from perfect. But it does provide vital relief at a critical moment. However, as I've said all along, this bill is just the first step, a down payment in addressing the crises, more than one that we're in. There's a lot more work to do. Early next year, I'm going to put forward to the Congress my plans for what comes next. We'll need more help to fully distribute the vaccine. We're going to need more testing in order to be able to open our schools. We're going to need more funding to help firefighters and police, many of whom are being laid off as I speak. And the same with nurses, risking their lives in the front lines. The same for millions of hurting families who are unable to put food on the table, pay rent, or the mortgage. Unemployment's extended for another 10 weeks. It's going to take a lot longer than that. But Congress did its job this week. And I can and I must ask them to do it again next year. But even with the changes in approach I'm going to put in place in late January, people are still going to be getting sick and dying from COVID. One thing I promise you about my leadership during this crisis, I'm going to tell it to you straight. I'm going to tell you the truth. And here's the simple truth. Our darkest days in the battle against COVID are ahead of us, not behind us. So we need to prepare ourselves to steel our spines. As frustrating it is to hear, it's going to take patience, persistence, and determination to beat this virus. There'll be no time to waste in taking the steps we need to turn this crisis around. My administration will start to do its part on our first day in office with masking requirements, a new strategy for testing, accelerated protection, protective gear. And we're going to challenge Congress and the American people to step up immediately as well to do their part. As with the relief bill passed by Congress, there's another challenge which my administration will confront on a bipartisan basis. A massive cybersecurity breach against the U.S. companies, many of them, as well as federal agencies. And there's still so much we don't know. including the full scope of the breach or the extent of the damage it has caused. But we know this much. This attack constitutes a grave risk to our national security. It was carefully planned and carefully orchestrated. It was carried out by using sophisticated cyber tools. The attackers succeeded in catching the federal government off guard and unprepared. Foreign actors have been working this breach since late last year, at least last year, setting the landscape to compromise our systems, scraping up sensitive information from our world-class tech sector and from private businesses and from United States government agencies. The truth is this: the Trump administration failed to prioritize cybersecurity. It did that from eliminating or downgrading cyber coordinators in both the White House and at the State Department, to firing the director of Cyberspace and Infrastructure Security Agency, to President Trump's irrational downplaying of the seriousness of this attack. Enough's enough. In an age when so much of our lives are conducted online, cyber attacks must be treated as a serious threat by our leadership at the highest levels. We can't let this go unanswered. That means making clear and publicly who is responsible for the attack and taking meaningful steps to hold them in account. Initial indications, including from Secretary Pompeo, Secretary of State, and Attorney General William Barr, suggest that Russia is responsible for this breach. It certainly fits Russia's long history of reckless, disruptive cyber activities. But the Trump administration needs to make an official attribution. This assault happened on Donald Trump's watch, when he wasn't watching. It's still his responsibility as president to defend American interests for the next 4 weeks. But rest assured that even if he does not take it seriously, I will. While I'm disappointed by the response of President Trump, I was pleased to see leaders in both parties in the Congress speak out loudly and clearly on this attack. Again, I want to thank prominent Republicans in the Senate, particularly for speaking out. It's a sign that with the new administration, we can confront these threats on a bipartisan basis with a united front here at home. That should be encouraging to the American people and a warning to our adversaries. In the meantime, the president's team for the next 4 weeks need to cooperate fully, which they haven't been doing, to share information that becomes available on both the impact and our response to ensure a smooth transition to protect the American people as administrations change. Over the next month, I intend to continue focusing on building my team so that the right people are in place on day one of my administration to take over this effort, to prioritize cybersecurity across the board. And I'll consult with experts to plan for the steps that my administration will take in order to secure our systems, improve our cyber defenses, and to better withstand future attacks that we know will come, and to impose cost on those who conduct them. And I fully expect bipartisan support from this based on what we've heard so far. Our adversaries are highly capable. Cyber threats are among the greatest threats to our global security in the 21st century. And I believe we have to treat them with the same seriousness of purpose that we treated threats of other unconventional weapons. We have to work with our allies to establish clear international rules and mechanisms to enforce them, and consequences for those countries that violate them. I want to close with this. As I look at the first of what will be millions of vaccinations going in the arms of Americans after hundreds of thousands of lives lost, a Congress finally passing an economic relief package after months and months of delay, and a new urgency for a bipartisan approach to cybersecurity after years of a president who refused to stand up to our adversaries and hold them accountable. I'm reminded of the quote of this season from a Jesuit priest named Alfred Delp. He wrote, quote, "Advent is a time for rousing." Delp believed that first we are shaken to our depths, and then we're ready for a season of hope. As a nation, we've certainly been shaken to our depths this year. Now it's time to awaken, to get moving, time for hope. We've gotten through tough times before in this nation. We'll get through these difficult times as well. And we'll do it by coming together, by working with one another, by being, you've heard me say many times, but we are at our best, the United States of America. There are certain things that rise way above partisan differences that threaten the United States. There are national security interests that require us to cooperate. And I'm confident we'll be able to do that. After a year of pain and loss, it's time to unite, to heal, to rebuild. For all those who are suffering right now, who've had enormous loss, and will lie awake at night wondering what tomorrow's bring, I'd say, well, God bless you all, and I promise you, we're going to continue to push as hard as we can to finish the job. May God bless you all. May God protect our troops. Merry Christmas and happy holidays to you all. Now I'll be happy to take some questions. Megan, I'll let you tell me who's...
Thank you, Mr. President-elect. President Obama once referred to this emerging cyber battlefield as the Wild West. President Trump, in commenting on this most recent breach, said the situation was well under control. Given what you just said about this, that it represents a grave risk, do you believe it also represents an act of war, and will you respond in kind if so?
The answer is, first of all, it is a grave risk and it continues. I see no evidence that it's under control. I've seen none. Heard of none. Defense Department won't even brief us on many things. So I know of nothing that suggests it's under control. This president hasn't even identified who's responsible yet. Number two, the question of the damage done remains to be determined. We have to look at very closely the nature of the breaches, how extensive they are, and what damage has been done. And thirdly, there's going to be a necessity, as President Obama and I and our administration talked about. We need international rules of the road on cybersecurity. We have to bring along our allies and our friends so we hold everyone accountable who breaches any of these basic fundamental rules. And lastly, I believe that when I learn the extent of the damage, and in fact who is formally responsible, they can be assured that we will respond, and probably respond in kind. There's many options which I will not discuss now.
Why not lay out those kind of options publicly, though? Isn't part of the issue here deterrence and the fact that Russia felt some impunity, if it is indeed Russia, to do what they've done here?
We have not done that in any other areas where we have faced international crises. We don't sit here and say that we're going to strike you with a nuclear weapon. We don't sit and we're going to say it and so on. Let us determine what the extent of the damage is, and I promise you, there'll be a response.
On another issue, sir, as you know, the runoff elections in Georgia could well determine whether there's a Democratic Senate in January or a Republican Senate in January. Are you waiting for the outcome of those two races to make some of the final selections for your cabinet, including the Attorney General, the most significant outstanding cabinet secretary you have to pick?
No, not based on the Attorney General. It's just a matter of getting to it and through it and being able to announce them all. They'll all be announced either just before or just after. We're going to make an announcement tomorrow, and we may have another announcement between then and Christmas and New Year's. We're just working through all of the efforts to do due diligence.
And lastly, has the issue of the investigation of your son come up in discussions with your team and with potential candidates about the Attorney General?
No, I guarantee you I'm going to do what I said. The Attorney General of the United States of America is not the President's lawyer. I will appoint someone who I expect to enforce the law as the law is written, not guided by me.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. President-elect. There is growing concern today about that new variant of COVID-19 sweeping across the UK. Should the United States right now impose a travel ban on flights coming in from the UK?
As you know, there already is one, unrelated to that finding that new strain, number one. And the question is whether or not, at the very least, it only allows Americans coming home to be able to come back to the States, citizens. One of the things I'm waiting to get a response from my COVID team is whether or not we should require testing before they get on an aircraft to fly home, number one. And number two, when they get home, should they quarantine? That's my instinct, but I'm waiting to hear from my experts right now.
You talked about how you want to propose a new COVID relief plan when you do take office.
Yes.
It took more than 6 months for Congress to reach this new deal. Americans are suffering at this moment. How can you assure Americans that relief will come and come soon?
You all asked the most interesting questions. Have you ever known anyone in the history of the United States of America that could be president and assure exactly what the Congress is going to do? So I can't assure anything, but I can tell you what I expect. I fully expect on those critical issues that we're facing, number one, being able to get all the work we need done and all the funding to be able to get that vaccine in everyone's arm, and that's 300 million people. We'll get that done because you're going to see that the responsibility has already been recognized by the Republicans and Democrats in the Congress because the constituency is going to demand it, number one. Number two, all those people are out there hurting, lost jobs through no fault of their own. They've extended unemployment for 10 weeks. Simply not sufficient. Necessary to get it done, to get through the holidays, but I predict to you we'll get cooperation and get that done. I've been arguing from the very beginning and told how, I love it, it makes me sound so much younger how naive I am about how the Congress works. I think I've been proven right across the board. The things that are left to deal with, from employment to people needing unemployment insurance, to the ability to have access to health care, to be able to get the treatment for free, et cetera. All of that is something that the public is not going to stand for us not doing. And I think with Donald Trump not in the way, that will also enhance the prospect of things getting done.
Will your plan include a new round of stimulus checks to the American people? And if
Yes.
so, for how much?
Well, look, that's a negotiating issue, but it will. Yes, it will. And I think, by the way, I think we owe Bernie Sanders and his Republican colleagues thanks for getting not all the stimulus we looked for, 1,200, but getting 600 done. So I think you're seeing that there is a clear understanding that these issues go beyond any ideology. People are desperately hurting, and the Republicans are hurting as badly as Democrats. There are a few people, and I'm not saying they're responsible for any of this, a few people are doing extremely well in that K-shaped recovery, and they're doing fine, but they still need access to the vaccines. They still need access to making sure that we are able to handle crises in the hospitals, et cetera. So I think they're on the things relating to A, vaccine distribution, which is going to cost billions more dollars. It's simply going to cost billions more dollars. We need national standards to lay out to help governors determine how they're going to get that vaccine throughout their communities, number one. Number two, we're going to need to take care of those people who, through no fault of their own, are unemployed. They've worked like hell, but they have no job because of the COVID crisis. And thirdly, we're going to have to begin to rebuild the country. We can't wait. We can't wait to rebuild the economy. We're going to have to start doing that now on infrastructure programs and a whole range of other things. I think the sort of the dawn is broken on the vast majority of people. There are still people who don't want to help. There are still people who are insisting my way or the highway. But the vast majority of the members of Congress, I believe, will be able to work out those specific issues that are of national consequence.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you.
Mr. President-elect, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm still not sure if I heard you say specifically, though, sir, what is your ask of the Congress? In just 1 month's time, what is your ask of the Congress after you have watched over these many months when people in your party as well did not necessarily act as quickly as some Americans would have liked? What is your ask, sir?
My ask will be laid out there in detail, but it relates to 4 things. Number 1, making sure we have all the money we need to get the vaccine to 300 million Americans at a minimum over the next year, the next calendar year. Number 1. Number 2, making sure that all those people who are unemployed through no fault of their own because of the COVID crisis, and small businesses and big businesses, et cetera, shutting down, that they continue to be able to live day to day. They don't engage in food shortages. They're not in a position where they get thrown out of their homes. I would also be asking for a moratorium on being evicted from your homes for failure to pay rent. Moratoriums on relating to the issue of whether or not your mortgage are being paid. Thirdly, I think it's critically important we provide all of the PPE as well as the direct payments to small businesses and others to be able to stay open, to be able to keep their people employed. That is something that's going to increase as time moves. And lastly, we're going to need to make sure that we're in a position that we can provide for the opportunity for people to begin to go back to work and get new jobs, developing infrastructure.
Given the narrow majorities in the House and Senate, you've watched many administrations come and go. Do you believe that you will have a honeymoon to get things accomplished?
I don't think it's a honeymoon at all. I think it's a nightmare that everybody's going through, and they all say it's got to end. It's not a honeymoon. They're not doing me a favor. I'll ask you a rhetorical question I don't expect you to answer. And that is, do you think that Republicans who are losing their businesses, do you think Republican constituents out there who can't pay their mortgage, do you think they're not letting their Republican representatives know they got a problem? Do you think the person who just lost a family member and is worried about losing another one who happens to be a Republican, a staunch Republican, isn't telling his or her Republican senator or state representative, you've got to help, you've got to get something done? Do you think all those people who are making judgments of whether or not my child will be able to go to school and I have to stay home and I can't go to work, therefore I have no income, are all Democrats? I think there's just been a dawning here. And look, you have a different team in town. You have a different team in town. I'm not going to villainize the opposition, but I'm going to stand and say this is what we got to do because they know it. They know it. It's not like I'm saying what we want to do is we want to make sure that we are going to sign a new trade agreement with A, B, or C. This is life and death. That's why I believe we'll get it done.
Sir, if I could ask a follow-up to the Attorney General decision. You and President Obama selected Eric Holder on December 1st. Every recent president has selected their Attorney General by this point. What is taking you so long to make this critical decision? And do you believe that this is a time in the post-Trump era where you need someone who is not steeped in politics, who may have a life's work above or beyond politics?
The answer is, first of all, we've gone faster than everybody in the total cabinet. So
not President Obama and yourself, sir.
The whole cabinet?
The whole cabinet.
The whole cabinet?
Well, there were a few missteps on commerce, as you remember, but
I do.
I'm sure.
I didn't want to raise them, though.
Right.
But look, this is we're looking for a team who will instill the greatest confidence in the professionals at DOJ to know once again that there is no politics. There's no politics. As you know, there's been a great debate about in every single appointment whether or not there are enough African Americans, enough Hispanics, enough Asian Pacific Americans, enough people who are new and young. So we're just working through it. It's not by design. There's not an obvious choice in my mind.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Hi, Mr. President-elect.
Hey.
you just spoke about your confidence that it'll be possible to get things done once President Trump has left office.
Not just because he's left office, because it's all becoming obvious exactly what's at stake.
Right. But even so, are you concerned about the effects long term that his presidency and now in the transition, his refusal to concede, his challenges to the election will have on American politics, will have on the Republican Party, especially if he does take the step of filing for re-election next month, or run in 2024? Are you concerned about him lingering around? I know I see you smiling, but I still have to ask it. And kind of a corollary to that, would you consider filing for re-election early next year to show that you're not going to be a lame duck?
I'm not going to be a lame duck. Just watch me. Just watch me. I've been saying this from the very beginning. Look, let's just get the work of, from this point on, for the next several years, there is one objective, and it's not my political future. It's bettering the circumstances for the average American. That's what it's all about. And I want to communicate to the American people what I hope they already understand about me. It's about them. It's not about me. It's not about me.
But still, do you think that the climate will be different after President Trump than it was before?
Well, we'll see. I don't know. I mean, I'm not a fortune teller, but I can tell you that the calls I've gotten from sitting Republicans in powerful positions, they know me, they know I level with them, they know I never mislead, they know I tell them the truth, and they know I don't go out of my way to try to embarrass.
And in terms of the transition, are there areas where the Trump team has not been cooperative that have not been made public? We've heard a bit about the issues at the Pentagon last week. Are there other areas that you think the public should be aware of?
There are other areas I'm not sure it's relevant whether the public should be aware of. Look, what I'm trying to do is pull together the political parties that are in the Congress that know that we're facing 4 serious crises. And we have to address all of them. None of us will get all we want, but we can make real progress. And so my focus is on uniting, not emphasizing the divisions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President-elect. Russia, as you said, is suspected of carrying out this massive cyber hack. You said it happened under President Donald Trump's watch, but of course in January 21, it will then, of course, land on your doorstep. My question is, what are the...
Let's get something straight. Will land on my doorstep. His failure will land on my doorstep.
Yes.
Okay.
What are the practical implications of overseeing a government where experts say it could take years to know where the hackers went and years to remove them? How can you ensure that the systems will be safe given what experts are saying?
I can't ensure, but I can demand, based on the experts both here and among our allies, what is needed to find that out. It may cost literally billions of dollars to secure our cyberspace. It may take a great deal to get it done. First and foremost, it takes people who are knowledgeable and vigilant about what is happening and how it's happening. And so I'm just going to do all that need be done, to determine, A, the extent of the damage, B, the nature of how it occurred, C, what I should be doing internally in terms of my administration to protect against it in the future, and number 4, getting together with our allies to try to set up an international system of what constitutes appropriate behavior in cyberspace and get us all to get to the point where we all hold any other country liable for their breaking out of those basic rules.
And just to be clear at the top of that, did you say you couldn't ensure that the systems would be safe when you came into office then?
Of course I can. I don't know what the state of them is. They're clearly not safe right now. And then between now and January 20th, the likelihood of my being able to garner all the information, the extent and depth of the violations, exactly how the codes or how were breached, what was done, is not within my power to do that. But it will be an overwhelming focus for my administration.
And my other question is on immigration.
Yes.
I was just reading about the fact that officials in your transition, Jake Sullivan, Susan Rice, they say you won't be immediately rolling back Trump immigration policies. And I stress immediately, there are some immigration advocates who say, why not roll back the Remain in Mexico policy? Why not roll back the asylum restrictions? What is your timeline for rolling back some of the specific Trump administration immigration policies?
I've already started discussing these issues with the President of Mexico and our friends in Latin America. And the timeline is to do it so that we, in fact, make it better, not worse. The last thing we need is to say we're going to stop immediately the access to asylum the way it's being run now and end up with 2 million people on our border. It's a matter of setting up the guardrails so we can move in the direction. I will accomplish what I said I would do. A much more humane policy based on family unification, but it requires getting a lot in place and requires getting the funding to get it in place, including just asylum judges, for example. So it's a matter of it will get done, and it will get done quickly, but it's not going to be able to be done on day one, lift every restriction that exists and find out that and go back to what it was 20 years ago and all of a sudden find out we have a crisis on our hand that complicates what we're trying to do.
Would you say to immigration, what would you say to immigration advocates then who say maybe you're possibly dragging your feet too and it might take too long? It sounds like you're saying you need to be patient.
Look at me. I've never told them anything I haven't done. I'm working with them now. We're dealing with some of those very organizations as we speak. And I will do what I said. It's going to take not day one, it's going to take probably the next 6 months to put that in place.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Merry Christmas, everybody. Thank you.
All right, you've been listening to President-elect Joe Biden taking questions there, just making sure he's finished. It looks like he's addressing, just smiling to the reporters in the room, but of course, making some statements specifically, thinking about the upcoming holidays, thinking about families that will have an empty seat at the table because of COVID-19, talking about the stimulus, but talking about the unemployment benefits needing to be extended specifically. So it looks like that is certainly something that we do expect him to carry over into his administration come January 2021. But also taking some questions about an upcoming attorney general and the probe into his son Hunter specifically. So certainly if you want to read a little bit more about what the president-elect had to say, feel free to go to Bloomberg.com and hear a little bit more of that conversation. All right, right now, though, we do want to get another check on the world of business and check on those top business stories. Here is Charlie Pellet.
Hi, thank you very much. Here's what's going on. Stocks did drift lower as the president-elect was speaking right here on Bloomberg Radio. Let's get right to the numbers. Give you the why in a moment here. The Dow, low of the day now, down 182, drop of 0.6%. S&P lower by 7, drop there of 0.2%. NASDAQ, though, could see a record from the NASDAQ Composite Index. Any close above 12,764 will be a record. Right now, 12,796 on NASDAQ, up right now by 0.4%. Bottom line here, stocks mixed. Optimism over a COVID-19 relief bill tempered by the emergence of a new variant of the virus, along with a slew of lockdowns and travel curbs to contain it. 10-year yield 0.91%, gold down 0.8%, 18.62 the ounce, and crude West Texas Intermediate down 2.3%, 46.88 a barrel. And that, Carol Master, is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
It is indeed. All right, Charlie Pellet, thank you so much. So, as if the rally wasn't enough, Peloton shares soaring today, and this has to do with some news and specifically a deal. The company buying the fitness equipment company Precor. Our Bloomberg Quick Take chief correspondent Jason Kelly got an exclusive with Peloton's president. Check out a little snippet of this little interview.
It allows us to move even faster. Part of this is their R&D and fitness equipment we think is arguably the best in the industry. They've got 100 people, Jason, focused on R&D, that some of whom have decades of experience in building what we call tier 1 fitness equipment. And so if anything, it's going to allow us to go faster. And as I mentioned earlier, was a big part. The people were overall a big part of this deal. We really like the people there and think they're very talented.
All right, that's Peloton President William Lynch catching up with Bloomberg Quick Take chief correspondent, my former partner in crime, Jason Kelly. They caught up yesterday for an exclusive. So this is a big deal. Hello there.
Hello there. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you. So Peloton, like, as if they couldn't do anything more that would juice the stock this year.
How many times do we sit in this studio and talk about Peloton?
A lot.
A lot. And for good reason, because the stock is up more than 450% this year.
Nuts.
In another part of the interview, William Lynch said to me, of course, no one wishes a global pandemic on anything, but it has been extremely good for business. At the same time, as you know, it has really stretched their capability to get bikes and treadmills to people. So that was a big, big part of this deal.
So what does this deal, though, do specifically for them?
Well, that's exactly it. What it does is a couple things. First, it expands their horizons into the commercial business. So when we're back traveling again and hotels and college campuses and things like that, that's where you see a lot of Precor machines. So you'll see some Peloton sort of branding get into that, although Precor is going to keep a lot of its branding. More importantly, manufacturing. 2 manufacturing facilities that Precor has here in the United States. So for American customers who are very eager to get those Pelotons, they're going to start making Peloton bikes and treads.
How long does Precor stick around? I'm just saying, Peloton is a very distinct brand, and I just do wonder, like, that mixed branding is not always something that usually works long term.
It's a great question, and I pushed William a little bit on that. He said, listen, they have no plans to change it out. It actually is a pretty good brand in its market.
Yeah. Is it less expensive?
What's that?
Precor, is it a less expensive
It's
brand?
a little less expensive.
Okay.
It's more sort of commercial grade.
Okay, got it.
What I expect you'll see is maybe some, knowing just enough to be dangerous, you'll see some Precor branding, but you'll see Peloton software and services and content. So think about the idea of being on a college campus or being in a hotel gym, and maybe it's a Precor machine, but you've got the Peloton instructors leading you through your workout.
Listen, I think it's fascinating that they're buying automatically the manufacturing capability. Like, that is just like overnight, right? It's much quicker. It's much easier than all of a sudden like building equipment.
Exactly.
And building factories.
The other key thing here is 100 people focused on R&D at Precor. So as you heard William Lynch say, it accelerates their plan. So they've talked about doing a rowing machine. They've talked about doing different products. So now they've got instantly a huge team that are, said to be very strong in the business of developing new products.
Well, that's the first thing I did. I went and checked out their website. I'm like, okay, so what kind of products do they make? And it automatically essentially allows Peloton to continue to expand the brand.
Absolutely, yeah. And Peloton has huge ambitions. They also have a lot of money at their disposal, given what the stock has done.
I know, I'm just looking at it, 467% higher. It's just like off the charts. But I do wonder, Jason, and we'll have to see. It's funny, as I walk like the dog at night, I continue to see not only Peloton, but other people who've gotten like bike equipment.
Yep.
Like, everybody continues to order, but I do wonder when we get on the other side of this, how much of this ultimately sticks. But once you buy something, you're kind of like, you bought into the model.
It's a good question, and I think that what Peloton would say is, this purchase is almost a little bit of a hedge against that, right? Because if they are in hotels, if they are in college campuses, if they are going into maybe some more traditional gyms, if that becomes a thing on the other side of this, maybe they're poised to do pretty well. One of the things William also mentioned to me is that, and you and I have had this experience, you travel to a Westin, they've got a Peloton there that you can log in as a guest. They get a lot of sales from that if people sort of trying it there. So there's a marketing element to that as well. So listen, don't sleep on Peloton. I mean, they are, in the words of Tom Keene, killing it.
They're killing it. But what's interesting too, and I find it, and you and I've talked about this, like, there would be occasionally like some problem that would arise with Peloton, and they quickly get on it, whether it was the music problem when we knew they had to resolve that before they went public.
Remember that?
The ad. So unfortunate. But I mean, I feel like they react quickly, and they're understanding even the idea, the criticism that, listen, it's an expensive bike, it's an expensive service, but I do think they're continuing to think about, okay, how do we expand the market beyond what we've already got?
And one of the things that William mentioned to me as well in the interview was that maybe more acquisitions to come, little technology tuck-ins and things like that. They have not been very acquisitive to date, but maybe their appetite is growing there. Listen, there's a lot of carnage, for lack of a better term, in the fitness space, as you well know. Boutiques have been closed down. One of the last interviews you and I did on this show was about how New York City boutiques have been closed down since March. They have not opened up. So
and you see the list of just companies. Well, this is the other thing. What about their brick and mortar in terms of expanding? Is that something, or they don't really want to do that?
They don't really want to do that.
Yeah.
It's really expensive, and I think they're very happy with their distribution at this moment. And again, if you think about these sort of third places in many cases, the commercial ambition maybe is satisfied here. I don't think you're going to see a Peloton boutique necessarily, but you could see more and more Peloton branded machines and a whole variety of machines in those campuses, hotels, multifamily. Think about an apartment building. It's
great.
You could have a much larger footprint from a Peloton perspective.
So what are you going to be watching from Peloton for the next 6 to 12 months? What is it that I don't want to hear execution, otherwise you're out of here.
I would never say that. I'm smarter than that. I listen, you and I were work married for long enough that I know your hot buttons. I think new products. I mean, if you look at what's out there, the rowing machine has always been something that people have been looking for. You look at the success of Hydro, which actually has done pretty well. It's a little bit more of a niche than treadmill. I think they're going to ramp up the treadmills a little bit more. They now have 2 versions of it. It's sort of lighter footprint version. Right. So they have the Tread Plus and the Tread.
Is there a mirror version for Peloton, or does that kind of eat away at everything else?
I don't know about that. Mirror obviously got bought by Lululemon, and so, do they team up in some form or fashion with that? I personally am not sold on that concept. I haven't heard a lot of people who heavily endorse that.
I know.
So we'll see.
It's a little freaky to me.
Yeah.
Sorry, did I say that on air?
Yeah, you're like looking at yourself.
Who else can see?
Who else can see me?
Darn it.
But let's be honest. You and I like looking at each other in the mirror. This is the business that we're in.
The media world.
We're okay with that. So we'll see what Peloton does next.
Listen, Score. What a great exclusive. The president of Peloton, William Lynch, speaking to Bloomberg Quick Take chief correspondent Jason Kelly. You can hear that full conversation. You can check it out at Bloomberg.com. Where else can you find it, Mr. Kelly?
Bloomberg.com/quicktake. You never know what you can see. I know who you've been hanging around with recently, Tim Stenovic, my colleague on Quick Take. I'm sure he's promoting us well as well.
He is. All right, good stuff as always. Good to see you. Jason Kelly there. All right, watching Peloton shares, they are moving today. So is Apple, rising near record levels after Reuters reported that the company plans to build a self-driving car. Say what? And is targeting 2024 to produce the vehicle. That is the upbeat news that is definitely playing out. Let's get to our own Anand Srinivasan, Bloomberg Intelligence senior semiconductor and hardware analyst. He's on the phone in New Jersey. Anand, great to have you here. We had on Ross Gerber yesterday. He owns Tesla shares. He owns a Tesla car. I actually think he owns several Tesla cars, and he just kind of laughed at Apple getting into the EV market here in the self-driving market. What do you make of it?
I don't think it's a good idea, Carol. Thank you for having me. Great to talk to you.
Great to hear your voice.
So listen, this is cars are in 85 or so million market, 4.5 million EVs, gross margin 15%. Let's compare that to 200 million units in the iPhone, 22 million Macs, 50 million iPads, 29 million watches, 101 million headphones, and 55 billion in services. So if you want to be a technology partner to a car maker and produce the insides of it and make it an iOS experience inside a car, I'm good with that. There's an enormous amount of technology that Apple can provide, software, hardware, sensors, etc. But making a car, why reinvent the wheel? No pun intended.
Haven't they been working on a car of sorts for a while? And they kind of are. They're doing it. They're not doing it. They are doing it.
Look, we have soured, and even when we wrote our thing about the driverless technology, focus on the journey, not the destination, was our takeaway. Was that there's a certain element of sort of a hurdle to this technology taking off. And in the starting parts of the advanced driver automation systems, so the ADAS 2, ADAS 2, 3, some of those technologies have a place, and we use them quite frequently, like cruise control, lane shift, rear view mirror, 360 views, etc. But when you talk about the car driving itself under all conditions, under all scenarios, then it becomes a much bigger hurdle just from the driverless perspective. Then what happened is the industry has sort of bifurcated. Let's do electrification more, focus on ADAS less. ADAS 2 plus is sort of stalled. That's a barometer of how advanced and how automated the car is. Electrification has value. But again, all of this in the realm of component supplier is fantastic. I cover the semiconductor industry, and it's a fantastic area. It's 10% of the semi business, fantastic. But if you're trying to make the car, that's a whole different ball game. And there, I just think that Apple can be doing better things. You know, people ask me, what are you going to do with all that money from a cash hold perspective? And buybacks are one angle. But instead of attacking an industry where it's an established industry with low margins, why not we think of creating an industry as the iPhone did relative to when it was what was there before, which was the BlackBerry. So I think that the open-ended opportunities of large size, large growth, and high profitability are not existing industries ripe for disruption, but they may be actually new industries waiting to be created.
All right, so do you read this, Anand, as this, like, I don't know, 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, 24 months, Apple's going to come out and say, yeah, we're not going to do the car now?
It's a possibility. Look, I'm confident that if Apple were to enter the space, they would have a great product that would, and they would execute really well. But the bigger question is, would they want to get into this product, and should they want to get into this product? And my view on both of this is a strong no. If they choose to do it, I think it's multiple years away.
Yeah, why the timing? Just got about 40 seconds here. Why now are they making this announcement?
Listen, this is a piece by Popular Press, right? So we don't
Reuters,
know.
That's true. That's fair. So this wasn't really their intent to get it out necessarily, or who knows?
Correct. And they're sitting on a great product cycle, and the iPhone 12 is going to be a phenomenal machine for them.
Yeah. Anyway, we'll see, right? Stay tuned, and we'll keep a watch on it. Anand Srinivasan, always some really thoughtful insight on any of the companies he covers, including what he just had to say about Apple. He's senior semiconductor and hardware analyst covering Apple for us here at Bloomberg Intelligence on the phone from New Jersey. As we mentioned, though, we did see Apple. It's one of the stocks definitely outperforming. Let me just pull up my ticker here and get it another check, because I know it was hovering near record levels, but Apple's up about 2.6% in today's session. It's up about 79% so far here in 2020. All right, let's get back to world and national news. Back over to Ann Kate. She's in D.C. Hey, Ann.
Hey, thanks. Good afternoon. President-elect Joe Biden says the darkest days of the coronavirus are still ahead of us. In a speech from Wilmington, Delaware, Biden also says the Trump administration failed to prioritize cybersecurity, leading to that massive attack.
We did that from eliminating or downgrading cyber coordinators in both the White House and at the State Department, to firing the director of Cyberspace and Infrastructure Security Agency, to President Trump's irrational downplaying of the seriousness of this attack. Enough's enough.
America's top infectious disease expert says there is light at the end of the COVID-19 tunnel. Dr. Anthony Fauci, appearing on Good Morning America, got vaccinated today.
I feel very good about it because in a large part that vaccine was developed by my group at the NIH. So, you know, it's sort of a double positive. One, in general, I'm doing it because I want to symbolize to people the importance that everyone gets vaccinated who can get vaccinated.
There are now more than 18 million confirmed cases of the coronavirus in the U.S., and the death toll has topped 321,000. The pandemic is spurring many people to boost their savings. A survey by Bank of America finds half of respondents are more pessimistic about the economy than they were at the beginning of the year. 1/3 say they are kept up at night worrying about financial setbacks, while 37% are concerned about unexpected increases to healthcare expenses. President-elect Joe Biden has named a new education secretary. He has chosen Miguel Cardona, the education commissioner for Connecticut and a former public school teacher. Biden has pledged to have a majority of U.S. schools reopen by the end of his first 100 days in office. Global news 24 hours a day and on Bloomberg Quick Take, powered by more than 2,700 journalists. I'm Ann Cates. This is Bloomberg.
All right, Ann, thank you very much. You're listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Carol Master joining me once again is Charlie Pellet of Bloomberg News, and this plays off really well. We just heard from Bloomberg Quick Take Chief Correspondent, my former partner, Jason Kelly, who caught up with Peloton President William Lynch about this recent investment and buying of a company by Peloton. They bought Precor. Well, what's interesting is that rise in Peloton Interactive. What's interesting is, Charlie, we know COVID-19 has been brutal for fitness clubs, and that's why We've seen a string of bankruptcies when it comes to fitness clubs, and it's why companies like Peloton have actually, where you can exercise at home, have really benefited during the pandemic. This story by Cedrine Rostello talks about these micro gyms. It's a company known as SiloFit.
Indeed, SiloFit's got this app doing business. Started out in downtown Montreal, where they repurposed a 580 square foot office space. When you think about that's about the size of a studio apartment, and that's why they are called micro gyms. And also the thrust of this story, too, is that it helps to have a connection in the form of a well-known billionaire named Warren Buffett.
Well, yeah, the Buffett connection. What's interesting is this SiloFit, and apparently what they do is they take space, small space, and they've been renting it out by the hour to fitness trainers and small workout groups. And his timing has just been great because of the pandemic. Getting to Buffett, though, what's interesting is this company is backed by money from U.S. and Canadian venture capital firms, and also, and I'm not going to pronounce it right,
I will.
Ndamukong Suh.
You got it.
A defensive tackle for the NFL's Tampa Bay Buccaneers who counts billionaire Warren Buffett as a friend and booster.
And in the process, hoping to add more trainers, more customers, and ultimately expand the business. And I guess you could say, Carol, they want to get big, but obviously not too big, at least in terms of the size of the gyms.
Yeah, it's just like, talk about timing with all of this. And this is something, Charlie, you know, it's a story. We talked about it with Peloton. There are companies that, you know, in a weird way, actually benefited because of the pandemic, as we know. Many others, though, obviously have not. All right, Charlie Pellet, thank you so much. Check out more on that story at Bloomberg.com.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and at Bloomberg Quick Take. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. We are seeing a bounce higher in the S&P 500 index right now, but still red on the screen, at least for the S&P and the Dow. The Dow very close to session lows. Let's begin with the numbers, with the S&P down 7, a drop now of 0.2%. S&P at 3687. We've got the Dow down 0.6%. NASDAQ at a record. And now let's head right over to the breaking news desk for today's afternoon call. Here he is, Bill Maloney.
And good afternoon, Charlie. Like you said, stocks trading mixed right now, with the Dow down 183 points, S&P's dropped 7, NASDAQ still higher, up 58. The U.S. 10-year yield at 0.92%, gold is down 13, and transports are little changed. Among the main 11 S&P sectors, only tech and real estate were in the green. Energy and telecom led to the downside. And leaders to the upside in the Dow, Apple and Salesforce, while Walgreens, Goldman Sachs, and Amgen were under pressure. After earnings, Cintas was little changed, while container stores soared as much as 22%. In other news, the DOJ sued Walmart, alleging its role in the opioid crisis, and U.S. Bancorp is buying back $3 billion in stock. In deal news, Honeywell is buying Sparta Systems for $1.3 billion, and wrapping things up, Peloton surged as much as 15% to a record high. Live from the First Breaking News Desk, I'm Bill Maloney. Charlie?
Okay, we thank you very much, Bill. And to hear live breaking news over your Bloomberg-type squawk, SQUAWK on your terminal. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
I'm driving in my car. I turn on the radio.
How about you let me drive?
Oh, no. Who's gonna drive you home? Honey, please, I'll do the driving. Drive on. Excuse me, I want to drive. Just drive, baby.
It's the question that drives us.
This is the drive to the close.
That funky music will drive us till the dawn.
On Bloomberg Radio.
All right, we've just got about 11 minutes left in today's trading session. We are driving to the close. Back with us is Hillary Kramer, President and Chief Investment Officer at A&G Capital Research, author of Game Changer Investing, How to Profit from Tomorrow's Billion-Dollar Trend. She is on the phone in New York City. Hi, Hillary. How are you?
Carol, I'm very well, thank you.
Oh, good. Well, it's good to have you back. An interesting day. I called it kind of a moody day, which is maybe just because I'm in a mood. It's just that kind of a day. But I think, we're realizing, watching the pandemic, we got, another round of relief, but folks are saying it's really just not enough, even though we got it done. How do you see the market environment right now, Hillary?
You actually hit the bingo, which is that in many ways it is a moody day. I mean, this is the pre-Christmas slowdown in terms of volume, of course. So, that's kind of the foundation. But at the same time, look, we have the vaccine priced into the 2021 numbers. We have the end of COVID priced into the 2021 numbers.
Right.
And even though the market bounced back very quickly yesterday, once everyone understood the virus mutation news, that it doesn't make the vaccine void, and that it still could be very effective. The market didn't really like what it heard and had a chance to really digest. And that's what, we see Moderna's down today, and usually that stock is up all the time. But expectation and realization is setting in. The stimulus, Carol, that's another important point that you bring up. When it comes to the stimulus, if you really take a look, there's money for Food International there. There's money for new car. I was looking. It's 5,000 pages, but we were skimming through it.
We were joking about how long it is.
Yeah. Oh, and there's money for new cars for the agriculture department. There's just stuff in there, and it's very disappointing. And even the summary of it, anyone who doesn't want to read the 5,000 pages. It's very clear that there's just a little too much pork. There's a way too much pork in there.
Yeah.
And then there's also some fatigue. There's there's been a lot of anything that had the name cloud to it. Those stocks have gone up, and the Amazons and Apples. I mean, and they've hit their peak a while ago, but still, the market's trying to find its footing. Since September, the Russell small cap is up 35% in September alone. So that's the mood of the market.
Yeah, it's an interesting day where I love to I look at most read to kind of get an idea of, what's catching investors and Bloomberg terminal users their attention. I do want to mention some headlines that just did cross, and it's coming from some tweets out of Elon Musk, where he tweeted just about 6 minutes ago, during the darkest days of the Model 3 program, I reached out to Tim Cook to discuss the possibility of Apple acquiring Tesla for 1/10 of our current value. He refused to take the meeting. Just when you think 2020 couldn't get any odder and stranger. But, it is an interesting market, Hillary, where we were talking, I was just with Jason Kelly of Bloomberg. Peloton is a name that has just shot off the charts, has just gone up a lot. Apple's gone up. And in a name, it's a year where we talked about the markets overall have done pretty well. And yet it's not been a good year for humans. It's actually a headline on a story that we have in Bloomberg Business Week. So I don't know. I wonder where we go from here at this point, and where do you at this point, when you look at the market, want to commit new money?
In terms of new money, to me, it's the financials. The financials have been the laggard, even with Goldman Sachs at $250. I know it's down today, but they're the smartest guys. You have the investment management. Goldman Sachs is going into the retail business, which will help in terms of deposits and the balance sheet. Restructuring is going to be a big business. Goldman has truly become an international, both private equity bank, trading, investment bank. So I see Goldman Sachs, especially, it's still trading below what its ordinary book value would be. GS. Citigroup is another one. It's trading at 0.9 times tangible book. I've always been more of a JP Morgan person than a Citigroup C person. This stock is 59. It was 79 exactly a year ago, and there's a 3.4% dividend yield, and the loan losses, they're okay, and the credit's good. And the fact is, you have all these banks, whether it's JP Morgan or Citigroup, they can use the deposits, which they're paying 0% on, and they can borrow at 0%, and they're still doing mortgages at approximately 3%. So there's lots of money being made there. And
financials are your second worst performing major industry group in the S&P 500 this year. There's 11 of them, and they are the second worst, down about 7.4%. Yeah, it's pretty remarkable.
Right, and we will see the rotation back there. And I'm with you when Carol, when you talk about Peloton, I'm looking at it. I mean, that's, the stocks that are hitting 52-week highs, it's just kind of incredible. I mean, I'm in agreement with a PayPal, for example, that's up 74%, and hit a 52-week high today because of Venmo and the trend towards e-commerce. And it's just become the scale of a PayPal has been, it's grown, Shopify. But I know what you're saying when you talk about these companies. Like I was looking at Mercado Libre, that's MELI. You and I have seen Mercado Libre for 10 years. It's the eBay, Amazon, Google of Latin America, but suddenly up 189% on the year. So you're right. There's a lot of tiredness there. I will say, though,
just quickly,
Etsy, even though it's up 347% on the year, Etsy could be up another 100% from here.
I think I kind of agree with you. I think it's a breakout. I think people who never went to Etsy went this year, and they're like, oh, it's not what I thought. It's not just, macrame pot holders. It's a lot more. Hillary Kramer, have a great holiday season, a happy new year. Hillary Kramer, President and Chief Investment Officer at A&G Capital Research, on the phone from New York. There's nothing wrong with macrame pot holders. I am going to put that out there just before I get a lot of hate mail on that. Stick around. We've got the closing bell coming your way in just about 3.5 minutes.
markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and at Bloomberg Quick Take. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. There you have it, sound of the closing bell at the New York Stock Exchange as we wrap up trading on this Tuesday, December 22nd. A record for the NASDAQ Composite Index. Little changed on the S&P 500 Index. The Dow slumped 200 points right at the close, closing close to session lows. Stocks trading mixed as optimism over a COVID-19 relief bill was tempered by the emergence of a new variant of the virus, along with a slew of lockdowns and travel curbs to contain it. S&P 500 spent much of the day swinging between gains and losses. Technology shares rallied, and the consumer services and energy sectors were the biggest decliners. S&P down 7 at the close, a drop today of 0.2%. The Dow down 200, down 0.7. NASDAQ again at a record 12,807 on the NASDAQ Composite Index, up 65 points, a gain there of 0.5%. NASDAQ 100 Index up today by 0.2%. Hillary Kramer is president and chief investment officer at A&G Capital. Moments ago here on Bloomberg Business Week, she told us part of the malaise in the market today surrounds the stimulus package.
It's very clear that there's just a little too much pork. There's a way too much pork in there.
Yeah.
And then there's also some fatigue. You know, there's been a lot of anything that had the name cloud to it. You know, those stocks have gone up, and the Amazons and Apples. I mean, you know, and they've hit their peak a while ago, but still, the market's trying to find its footing.
Peloton shares up today by 11.6% after announcing that acquisition yesterday of Precor, an acquisition that is getting rave reviews from Wall Street analysts. Also advancing, also declining today, Honeywell shares. Honeywell International paying $1.3 billion for Sparta Systems. Honeywell lower now by 1.3%. Recapping, S&P down 7, a drop today of 0.2%. NASDAQ at a record. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Wild thing, think you move me. I got a few moves I know you'll like. Shaking all over.
Bloomberg Business Week. Movers and shakers.
Shaken. Let's do it.
On Bloomberg Radio.
All right. You are listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Carol Masser in our Interactive Brokers studio. And Charlie, of course, breaking down those final numbers on Wall Street. We did bounce around a bit. We definitely bounced off our lows of the session, but also off our highs. Just a little bit lower on the S&P 500, but down about 201 points, as Charlie mentioned on the Dow. NASDAQ just up about 65. S&P 500, though, risk trade definitely off today. 172 names in the index showing some gains, 330 lower, 3 unchanged. And if I look at the major industry groups in the S&P 500, let me just bring that up on my Bloomberg. Pulling up the one-day measures, 11 major industry groups. The only 2 higher today were information technology and real estate. Information tech up about almost 0.9%. At the bottom of the pack, energy once again down about 1.74%, excuse me. Let's bring in Bloomberg News cross-asset reporter Sarah Ponzak, who's been looking at the markets today. I have said since the beginning of our broadcast, Sarah, I'm kind of in a mood, feel like the world is in a mood, understandably so. And I kind of feel like it played out that way in the markets today.
It's holiday season. Come on, Carol.
I know. I'm trying
but no, you're absolutely right. It's been hard to stay optimistic all year long, and the markets are clearly having a difficult time remaining as optimistic as they have been. I mean, we have a market that's still not trading far off record highs. However, these worries over a new strain of the coronavirus are clearly weighing, and it's a concern, and you see that reflected in markets. For example, if you look at the single stock level, you look at the worst performers in the S&P 500 today, it's a lot of your so-called reopening stocks. So some of your worst performers, Norwegian today, down almost 7%, Carnival down near 6%. If I go down the list, I see American Airlines down near 4%. So you see that reopening trade that had really been booming much of this quarter now reversing. At the same time, like you said, with the sector breakdown, we're reverting back to this classically defensive setup where at the top of the pack. You have real estate, utilities, your classic defensive sectors. However, all the way at the top, you have tech leading once again. And tech has been a defensive play really all year long. It's at the center of the stay-at-home trade. So today, even though we saw the S&P, the Dow ending lower, we saw the NASDAQ outperform once again. And I know we spoke about it recently. Another classic stay-at-home stock was Etsy, and Etsy was actually one of the best performers today, too, up more than 4%.
I think that is so interesting and fascinating. I was just talking with Hillary Kramer, one of our market guests, and she's like, despite the run-up that we've seen in Etsy this year, get ready for even more to come. And I do think that's one of those companies, do you know when like we go through a period where all of a sudden like the world discovers something? And I do think Etsy is one of those names that I have to say I had some preconceived notions about it. But having like looked at it more recently, bought some things, like you understand that it's this incredible marketplace.
Right, and Etsy shares up close to 350% this year, up to a new record high today. It really has been unbelievable to watch. On a year-to-date basis, one of the best performing stocks in the S&P 500. It is quite amazing. But like you said, it's one of those things that possibly many have discovered this year while stuck at home, ordering online. And that is the trend going forward. There are trends and there are certain say digital trends, you could say, that have really reasserted themselves and accelerated this year. And the expectation is it's not going to slow down in the future.
Our best performing stock of the year in the S&P 500, Tesla, followed by Etsy. Like that really says a lot about this year.
It really does, and especially the fact that we can now see Tesla as the best performing stock in the S&P 500, considering it was added yesterday. So sure, it's a matter of semantics and timing, but if it wasn't as of this week, Etsy would be your best performing S&P stock this week.
Good
point. But that's another good point. Tesla now added to the S&P 500, started trading in the index, in the benchmark yesterday for the first day, down yesterday, down another day today. Tesla, your second worst performing stock in the S&P, only second to Facebook. So that you did see a divergence in the FANG trade there, and then you saw Tesla take a hit as well. But that, as the news of Apple possibly coming out with an electric vehicle is not too far away, really, in the next couple of years, the next few years, weighing on the stock.
I have to say, there's a lot of skepticism. We talked to Ross Gerber yesterday, who's like, well, yeah, not likely. And we also are Anand Srinivasan today, who said, I'd much rather see kind of Apple focus on some of the inners or interiors in terms of, you know, the programs that are inside a car, that kind of makes more sense because the margins on a car, it's not like the margins on a cell phone.
Right. It does seem like an interesting turn for Apple, especially considering the fact that they just diversified their offerings by moving into the exercise space as well with Apple Fitness. So it seems like there have been rumors in the past, but it's an interesting offering and an interesting turn for them. Elon Musk, though, just about 20 minutes ago, tweeting during the darkest days of the Model 3 program, I reached out to Tim Cook to discuss the possibility of Apple acquiring Tesla, and he refused to take the meeting. So it's true. It's just an interesting tweet from Elon Musk.
Yeah, and this is like a few years ago. I know, I saw that too, and it's like a headline. Wait, was this recent? No.
No, not recent.
What are you expecting for the rest of the week? I mean, volume was already light today, correct?
Right. Volume today was already light. If I take a look at how it would stack up over the last 100 days, to give you an idea, the S&P 500 trading volume today down about 13% or so from what's been average over the last 100 days. Now, tomorrow we will have a bit of a data dump, considering the fact that we have a half trading day and then we have the holiday on Friday. So tomorrow we will get initial jobless claims alongside some other economic data, but it's going to be really hard to take away anything succinct, anything material and sustainable from markets this week and next week, just considering that we're going to have thin holiday trading.
It is amazing that we're just getting to the final few days of this year and getting ready to wrap it up in what has been, you know, the most incredible market year, no doubt about it. Hey, Sarah, thank you so much. Always appreciate it. Sarah Ponczak, she is our Bloomberg News cross-asset reporter joining us on the phone in New York City. Just a reminder of how we closed on this Tuesday, December 22nd. Dow Jones Industrial Average down almost 201 points, down 2/3 of 1 percentage point. S&P, a loss of about 8 points. It was down just a hair, down 0.2%. NASDAQ bucking the trend. Sarah talking about that. Those tech names once again outperforming, up about 0.5% for a 65-point gain. All right, let's get back to world and national news. Over to San Francisco we go, and to Ed Baxter. Hi, Ed.
Hey, Carol. With less than a month before his inauguration, President-elect Joe Biden said today, enough is enough on Donald Trump's ignoring the threat of cyber attacks.
This assault happened on Donald Trump's watch when he wasn't watching.
And he says the president needs to step up now.
Cyber attacks must be treated as a serious threat by our leadership at the highest levels. We can't let this go unanswered. That means making clear and publicly who is responsible for the attack.
He says all the experts say Russia. He says he appreciates the relief bill, meanwhile, but needs more.
We'll need more help to fully distribute the vaccine. We're going to need more testing in order to be able to open our schools. We're going to need more funding to help firefighters and police, many of whom are being laid off as I speak.
Now, he says there are more dark days ahead for the nation from COVID, even with the vaccine rolling out. Dr. Anthony Fauci today on ABC echoes and says personal care.
Please do what I suggested for Thanksgiving. We don't want to cancel Christmas, but you have to tone down plans, try to minimize travel, and try to avoid large congregations of people indoors.
He did get the Moderna vaccine today. He also says he'd like to see testing before people internationally board planes to come to the U.S. He says he believes the variant is already here. And New York Governor Cuomo.
We want to test for the variant. If it's here, we want to know it. We want to isolate it immediately.
And he says he wants to limit travel into the United States. By the way, Dr. Deborah Birx says she's going to retire. She'll help Joe Biden for a little bit, but then she'd like to relax. In San Francisco, I'm Ed Baxter. This is Bloomberg.
All right, Ed Baxter, thank you so much. You're listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Carol Massar, and once again, joining me is Bloomberg News' Charlie Pellet. A couple stories that have to do with bonuses, once again, on the Bloomberg terminal today, Charlie. Among our most read, there's one from Deutsche Bank, and they are considering raising bonuses for some of their, I guess, fixed income traders by roughly 10%. to reward them for a bumper year that left bumpier year that left the company's CEO more reliant than ever on their performance. Traders, man, they really showed up for a lot of firms.
Yeah, and too, you know what? It's worth putting this story in perspective, though. Let's take our listeners inside the news gathering process. Also, perhaps too, for our Bloomberg terminal customers. Carol, what happens anytime you put bonus in a headline?
It usually is among our most read stories on the Bloomberg.
Without a doubt.
It's like a full one correlation. I'm just going to say.
You know, it's compensation. Everybody loves to hear about bonuses, and if you're not on Wall Street, depending on your point of view, some people, don't want to hear about who's making what, where, and when. But you put bonuses in the headline, and yes, there's emails and a lot of interest in there. But Deutsche Bank, as you say, raising traders' bonuses by about 10%. And I might add too, not just Deutsche Bank today, but Citigroup. They're also talking about bonuses, but the interesting thing there, 10% bump in bonuses, but however, our story by Jenny Serrain focuses on fixed income traders at Citigroup.
Yeah, exactly. They're planning to increase the bonus pool for its fixed income traders who are set to post their best performance in more than a decade. So the overall bonus pool for traders who deal in fixed income currencies and commodities is likely to increase at least 10%, while the pool for equities traders will probably be left unchanged. Sorry, equity traders.
Exactly, and also going to be very interesting. Here we are talking about Deutsche Bank, also talking about Citigroup. Going to be very interesting to see how some of the other big bank names weigh in, given the year that they have had as well.
Well, check out this number from Citi, Charlie. The bank's fixed income trading revenue expected to jump 34% this year to $17.3 billion, according to our estimates compiled by our team here at Bloomberg. So that explains maybe that bump in bonuses. Charlie Pellet, thank you so much. You're listening to Bloomberg.
markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and at Bloomberg Quick Take. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. Turned out to be a mixed Tuesday. NASDAQ and the Russell 2000 at records in a holiday-shortened trading week. Stocks, though, lower for a third day. Choppy session. Optimism over a COVID-19 relief bill, tempered by the emergence of a new variant of the virus and a slew of lockdowns and travel curbs to contain it. The dollar advanced. Treasuries gained. 10-year up 4/30 seconds. 10-year yield 0.91%. Let's get to the numbers with the S&P down 7, a drop there of 0.2%. The Dow down 200 points, down 0.7%. NASDAQ, though, a record now at 12,807, up 65 points, a gain of 0.5%. Again, gold lower 0.8%, 18.61 the ounce, down $14.93. And West Texas Intermediate crude, a retreat there, down 2.2%, 46.90 a barrel. Recapping stocks mixed. S&P down 7, a drop of 0.2%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie, thank you so much. Appreciate that update. So we know blockchain is definitely having a moment this year, definitely. And just last week, IBM and Salesforce announced a partnership which builds on IBM's recent introduction of IBM Digital Health Pass, which we'll find out a little bit more about in just a moment. It is built, though, on IBM blockchain technology. So let's talk about it with Chris Moose, partner at IBM Healthcare and Life Sciences, joining us on the phone from Houston. Chris, nice to have you here with us. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you for having us.
Well, listen, tell us a little bit about, we have been talking, I feel like all of a sudden we're all in again when it comes to Bitcoin and blockchain and trying to understand how it is increasingly being incorporated into our world. Tell us about this partnership and what you guys are up to.
Sure. So unlike what sometimes people think about when they hear blockchain and the cryptocurrency aspects of it, what we're focused on is how do we allow people to have something that they trust, that they have a vaccine that they know the provenance of, that they have a vaccination event that they can later prove to other entities that might want to understand, is this person that I'm talking to, have they been vaccinated? Can they show that they have been vaccinated? It's an essential element, we believe, in reopening economies, stadiums, and returning life to normal. And that's what we're doing in conjunction with Salesforce with the Health Pass tool.
So how does it actually work? Explain it a little bit. Because, you know, we've talked about things about like a travel passport or a health passport that might be something that becomes, you know, a part of our life. And I think we're all trying to figure out, okay, how do we do it so it's secure? So tell me exactly what it is that you guys have created.
Sure. So working with Salesforce, when someone presents themselves at a vaccination site that's running the Works.com platform from Salesforce, when they have a vaccination, they then receive an email, and that email gives them a certificate that they can import into their phone. And then later on, when they show up at a venue that might be checking for health status, for a vaccination proof, they're able to show that credential on their phone to the venue. The venue can scan it and then understand, yes, this person has in fact been vaccinated. I know that this is authentic certificate, and I'm able to let this person join us in our event.
Who is the keeper, though, ultimately, of all that information?
So the healthcare provider, the entity that is administering the vaccination, ultimately is the issuer of this certificate, and the citizen is in complete control of all their data at all points in time. We're not at IBM taking that personal information about someone's health status. What we're doing is facilitating the interaction between the citizen, the patient, and the person that issued that vaccination, so they can later prove that that event did in fact happen.
Yeah, it's interesting, right, to show kind of the world. I mean, we see to some extent apps that work over in China when it comes to kind of your virus status, right? And I do wonder how you think that this more broadly maybe becomes a part of our world for maybe general health, or do you think this is something just novel in a year where we are fighting a health pandemic?
I think that this is going to become part of the larger fabric about how we go forward. This pandemic has been a shock to all of us, but what it's also really grounded us on is our health is incredibly important, and being able to understand if someone has been vaccinated against COVID or perhaps other diseases, the ability to understand and to prove that is going to become essential. And really what we're trying to do here is to develop trust, an ability of someone to trust the product that's being given to them. That's going to be that vaccine that goes into them. And then for someone later on to trust that the person showing up has in fact been vaccinated. Ultimately, part of reopening our society is going to come down to that notion of trust.
Right, exactly. It already is, right? Like this whole idea of community and trust, and like when someone says, listen, I've been living in a bubble, like you're trusting them to do it. But when there's something a little bit more concrete, such as a vaccine, that takes it to a whole other level. You know, a digital health pass, Chris, to me, I think we have talked a lot about the healthcare system and healthcare world. It is backwards, to say the least, in terms of embracing kind of a comprehensive technology system, so that as you move through the system and different providers and practitioners, that, you know, all your information is somewhere. But at the same time, I think we're all nervous about having all that information in one place. But I do wonder, do you see potentially, is that the goal with an IBM Digital Health Pass, that it is, you know, ultimately it becomes kind of a person's health dossier?
We think it's incredibly important to simplify the ability of a person to understand and be able to represent their health history. And so Health Pass is one step towards enabling all of us to take control of our healthcare information and to then represent it to other people that might need that, should we want to share it with them.
So maybe that's a yes. No, and I'm just trying to, because I think, I'm not trying to be difficult, but I think it is the one thing, right, that we all still get frustrated that every time we go to a new provider, or even our old providers, and it's like, oh, here we go again. I've got to put all this information, or, you know, they want to, you know, a CD of a test you had or something, and it's just becomes, it's such a kind of backwards way, an old-fashioned way of kind of getting information around. So I do wonder, I do feel like healthcare took a big step forward this year with telemedicine, and I wonder what else is coming and how you guys see it, since you guys have a front row seat here.
Well, absolutely. And part of what you're highlighting is the need for interoperability and the portability of health information. And Health Pass piggybacks on that concept of being able to take your health information and easily move it between all the different points of care that you might experience, and then also to have a document that's on your phone that you can present to someone that sits well outside the healthcare ecosystem. So I might want to be able to share information with other providers that are helping me with my healthcare, but then I also might want to be able to go to someone, say a stadium or an airline, and to be able to share with them at my discretion information about my health too.
Right, like that health passport or travel passport. Good to catch up with you, Chris. Thank you so much. Chris Moose, have a great holiday and a safe holiday. Partner at IBM Healthcare and Life Sciences, joining us on the phone from Houston on this Tuesday. Well, for those of you listening in New York and San Francisco, watching on YouTube as well, Bloomberg Business Week, we're going to continue. If you're listening on Bloomberg 99.1 in DC, Sound On with Kevin Cirilli is coming up next. Coming up next, we check in with the president of Samsonite North America, one of those companies obviously affiliated with the travel industry. We'll see how they've been faring. That's coming up on Bloomberg.
Broadcasting live to New York, Bloomberg 1130. To Washington, D.C., Bloomberg 99.1. To Boston, Bloomberg 1061. To San Francisco, Bloomberg 960. To the country, Sirius XM Channel 119. And around the globe, the Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Business Week.
Yes, you're listening to Bloomberg Business Week. I'm Carol Masser in our Bloomberg Interactive Brokers studio. So we're going to catch up with the president at Samsonite North America. We're curious about how her world has been during the pandemic, and they've been doing some interesting social media and videos, so we'll talk about that in terms of reaching out to their consumers. In the meantime, though, let's get another check on your top business stories. Once again, here's Charlie Pellet.
Thank you very much, Carol Masser. Here's what's going on. Russell 2000 at a record year-to-date, up 19.3% compared to the S&P 500 index, up 14.1%. Should point out NASDAQ also at a record today, but Anna Hahn is equity strategist at Wells Fargo Securities, and on Bloomberg Television this morning, she told us small cap stocks are likely to continue to outperform.
Small caps have underperformed large caps for over 6 years. And now you're starting to see that year to date, small caps are leading by a couple percentage points. We think that's just the beginning, and it's not just small caps. We like that contrarian low momentum trade as well.
Stocks lower for a third day as optimism over a COVID-19 relief bill tempered by the emergence of a new variant of the virus and a slew of lockdowns and travel curbs to contain it. Right to the numbers with the S&P down 7, a drop today of 0.2%. The Dow tumbled 200 points today, down about 0.7%, closing close to session lows. NASDAQ, as I mentioned, record there, up 65, a gain of 0.5%. And worth mentioning the year-to-date number for NASDAQ so far this year, up 42.7%.
Say what?
Say what? 42.7%. It is unbelievable. NASDAQ 100 index up 45.6%. 10-year yield 0.92%. Gold down $15 the ounce, drop there of 0.8%. Crude down 2.5% today, 46.79 a barrel. Meat producer JBS says its North American animal slaughter rates remain near normal, even after the world's largest meat packers sent home thousands of staff in response to a second wave of COVID-19 across the United States. Today, the ADR is up today by 1.8%. Bank of America's chair of global corporate and investment banking, Ann Clark Wolf, leaving the firm. She's said to be leaving to pursue a new career path. Recapping equities mixed today. S&P down 7, drop there of 0.7%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That Carol Masser.
Yeah.
Yeah. Say what?
That's a wait what moment.
It really is. Sometimes I look at these numbers and I can't believe, is it me or is it the chart wrong? And we know that's not going to happen. But 42.74%.
It's not you, it's me, Charlie.
There we go. I've heard that before in my life many times.
Okay, Charlie Pellet, thank you so much. So we have talked a lot about the hospitality industry and all the companies associated with it. You folks know that, right? We've witnessed that industry. They're still living through, in many ways, a shutdown like they've never seen before in their lifetime. So like many other companies during the pandemic, it means learning to pivot and adapt. Here with what they have been up to is Lynn Berard. She's president at Samsonite North America. Lynn joining us on the phone in Massachusetts. Lynn, it's good to have you here on Bloomberg Business Week on Bloomberg Radio. So tell me about, first of all, what your life has been like since March.
Thank you, Carol. Well, certainly it's a pleasure to be here, and I'm happy to be on the call. As it has been for everyone, it has certainly been a unexpected and quite busy, challenging year since March. One year that has been in the industry for 27 years and certainly has not experienced anything like it. But we immediately, upon the pandemic hitting in March, we had started to hear some sense of that from our team in China. So we got a little bit of a head start from our colleagues about what was happening in China. So we did immediately have to pivot. And at the very start of the pandemic, we really focused on our people just to make sure that everyone was safe, and certainly thankful that our employees are healthy and well. But we did have to make some strategic shifts within the business. Certainly, number one priority was to really relook at our structure, knowing that there was a slowdown and ultimately pretty much a virtual stop to travel.
Right.
As a global company, we are extremely fortunate to have our CEO, Kyle Gendreau, who was previously our former global CFO for many years, leading us through. So him, along with our current CFO, Reza Telegani, really worked hard to ensure that we secured the financial liquidity to weather the storm. And then regionally, it was really up to us to manage the regions, and very fortunate to have a very strong leadership team. But we did have to make sure that we looked at our cost structure and reevaluated the business to set us up for a very strong and stable future. And I'm very glad to report that we are all extremely confident and that we have set ourselves up in a strong position to get us to the other side. At the same time we were doing that, we certainly didn't want to lose sight of our consumers, and recognizing that they had shifted more to an at-home environment and weren't traveling, we still wanted to be along the journey with them. So we found ways to communicate with them digitally in more unexpected ways, showing them how to exercise with luggage products. We made some products.
Can I just say, that is just, I can only imagine the virtual planning meeting, Lynn, where it's like, all right, guys, listen, nobody's traveling. That's our business. So what do we do? But how clever that someone's like, hey, and it's a great idea. I mean, I think all of us those who couldn't maybe afford to buy a Peloton or something else were like, all right, I'm looking around home. What can I use at home to work out?
Absolutely, and there was a shortage in buying some weights, so load up those suitcases and start lifting, right? So we did find creative ways to pivot around there. And then after that transformed, we actually did start to see, as we approached the summer months into the fall, that there was a shift to some more smaller localized movement around. And we are fortunate to have a broad portfolio of products. So our Gregory packs, the mountain hiking, and people are buying into those packs. So that business was not as tough as the travel suitcases happened to be, and really began to focus on ways that we could help consumers, even bags and backpacks. We also own Spec, and we saw an increase in tablet cases as consumers were shifting to working from home, and saw a big spike in those. So we really just shifted into providing consumers and marketing to our consumers with products that they would need in the new environment.
How easy, though, was it to shift in terms of either marketing? I mean, I've talked to a fair amount of CMOs at some well-known brands, too, and they just were like, all of a sudden it was like, all right, this advertising campaign just doesn't work anymore, and we have to quickly shift. And things that would normally take months, all of a sudden you were shifting overnight. You just didn't have a choice. Just got about 30 seconds, then we'll come back and talk some more. But I'm assuming you guys were going through similar things.
That's exactly 100% correct. I think everybody had to adapt on a dime, and we all rotated quickly, and we were monitoring sales on a daily basis. One of the fortunate benefits of e-commerce and digital as well is you can see by minute what you're selling. So we were able to pivot very quickly. We have a very versatile team throughout the region, and we were able to really leverage all of those insights that we had to make sure that we were capitalizing where we could help consumers and travelers out there.
Lynn, sit tight for a second, because I want to come back, because I'd love to know a little bit more about, how this maybe impacts your longer term strategy, especially when you saw like an increase in folks using things for hiking. Like, is there a way that some of the strategy that you guys have at the company maybe changes as a result of what we saw this year? We're going to come back to Lynn Berard. She's president at Samsonite North America, on the phone in Massachusetts. Right now, though, we're heading out west to San Francisco, and Ed Baxter. Hey, Ed.
All right, good throw. Gotcha. Thank you, Carol. Joe Biden has gone on offense today against Donald Trump, whom he says has closed his eyes to cyber attacks.
This assault happened on Donald Trump's watch, when he wasn't watching. It's still his responsibility as president to defend American interests for the next 4 weeks. But rest assured that even if he does not take it seriously, I will.
Biden pointed out leadership of Cyber Division either left or are being fired from the administration. He says all the experts say that this current attack was Russia. Everybody but Donald Trump continues to bang on China. Mr. Biden says even with a vaccine, COVID will bring the U.S. some dark days, and that one of his first days he will work with Congress for more relief money. Regarding the virus, Dr. Anthony Fauci, who got his inoculation today, says it is a major step forward, but doesn't replace good protective health practices. And as the CDC says, a new variant seen in the U.K. is already in the U.S., Dr. Fauci agrees.
Vaccines are going to make a serious, important, positive impact. But until then, we really need to adhere to good, prudent public health practices.
Yeah, he says, meanwhile, he doesn't feel air travel should be suspended. He says there are other things to do.
Possibility and maybe the likelihood of requiring the testing of individuals before they board a plane to the United States. That is under active discussion.
Yeah, New York Governor Andrew Cuomo a bit more emphatic.
I would say to the United States, mandatory testing of anyone coming from any country and flying into the United States. Well, why doesn't New York do that? I can't because
he says it's federal duty. This is Bloomberg.
All right, Ed Baxter, thank you so much. You're listening to Bloomberg Business Week. I want to bring back Charlie Pellet of Bloomberg News. And Charlie, these are right up your alley. First of all, you've got to feel happy. First of all, because of the $900 billion relief package for homes and businesses that are been battered by the coronavirus pandemic, airlines are getting ready to call back tens of thousands of workers that they let go in October because of this assistance. But the question is really, how long will they be able to keep their jobs? This story, by the way, thanks to the folks over at Dow Jones Wall Street Journal.
Indeed. I saw the story there. Put a smiley face on myself the second I saw that story. It seemed to be good news. And then I read Joe Nacera's column on the Bloomberg, and he explains why airlines outrank restaurants in relief money. But he's raising the question, if the workers do come back, what do they do? Because who's flying where? Who is flying anywhere these days? And yes, they've got, the authorization to pay the workers, but what do they do? So, real mixed emotions on this. But yes, good news. We need airlines. And if and when we're all, able to start traveling again, you got to have the infrastructure in place.
Well, I have to say, we're going to get back to our conversation with Lynn Berard over at Samsonite. They've got a travel as a gift video spot, and it's basically just everybody, promising, hoping, and talking about like surprising people, like we're going to go on a trip, and it's just what we can all look forward to. In the meantime, until we can get back on planes, there's a new pandemic era gadget for those who can't wait to gaze outside an airplane window again. It's called Skyscape.
I love it.
It's not right. It's actually like a little monitor you put up, and it looks like you're flying.
Exactly. I saw something like this on a Disney cruise years ago for people inside the inside cabins.
Oh, my God.
What you've got is you've got a TV monitor that gives you a view of what the ocean looks like because you don't have a window in the interior cabin. But I love this. Put this up in my little apartment there with a folding bathroom door. I can pretend that I'm in a middle row seat eating those little meals with my elbows pressed up against my neighbors.
You don't get food anymore. You don't get a blanket. So just remember that.
I know.
But Skyscape apparently mimics a plane ascending and descending through clouds from sunrise to sunset. Really fascinating.
Buy me one for Christmas. Love it.
Promises. You got it.
markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and at Bloomberg Quick Take. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. Third day of losses for the S&P 500 index. Spent much of the session fluctuating between gains and losses, but in the end, a down day. S&P tumbling 7 points today, down 0.2%. Optimism over that COVID-19 relief bill tempered by the emergence of a new variant of the virus. NASDAQ, though, at a record, up 65, a gain there of 0.5%. Russell 2000, also at a record, up 1% today, bringing its year-to-date gain to 19.3%. The Dow lower by 200 points, down 0.7%. 10-year up 5/30 seconds, 10-year yield 0.91%. Gold down 0.9%, 18.60 the ounce, and West Texas Intermediate crude down 2.4%, 46.81 a barrel. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie, thank you so much. I want to get right back to our guest, because still with us is Lynn Berard. She's president of Samsonite North America, still with us on the phone in Massachusetts. So, Lynn, are there any consumer trends? Because we've talked to the CEO of Whirlpool and some others, and I was talking to another one on the phone earlier today, and just saying how some of the consumer trends that we're seeing this year, especially consumer patterns that stay with you for 7, 8, 9 months, they don't go away quickly or may not at all. Are there consumer trends that you're seeing that you think might impact how you guys, I don't know, your composition of your product line or how you sell? Is there anything that might have a longer term impact in terms of strategy?
Yeah, absolutely. So Samsonite has historically been known for a suitcase travel provider, but we have over the years developed a strong assortment of bags and accessories, and we have seen a significant uptick in those products during this downturn, and it really accelerated the lift in sales. So I don't expect that is going to shift. I think that will continue to be robust, and that will follow us for some time. And simultaneously, when travel does come back, we will start to see the lift of the travel suitcases coming back. And that's what really led us into launching the new ad campaign for the holiday, because we really all felt that travel is a gift. We did see that there was purchase behavior that showed consumers were still buying into luggage, and they were just excited for their next trip. So we brainstormed. Our head of marketing, David Oxman, here at Samsonite, worked with an agency to develop a campaign that really showed people either gifting or gifting travel items or surprising loved ones during the holiday. So anybody that has seen the video, it was just so emotional. And it really...
I was going to say the exact same thing to you. I got a little emotional because I was thinking, God, I used to travel a lot for work, family travel. And it's just so amazing how much the last time I was on a plane was, I think, in February before everything shut down.
Yeah, it's like the old saying, oftentimes when something is taken away, it's when you truly reflect how much you miss it. So I think that was clearly what we were hearing and seeing from our employees, but also as consumers. So it really was to evoke some of those feelings and that encourage people for hope into 2021 and encourage them to give the gift of travel for this holiday season so that they can have a chance when things open up to go visit and family and loved ones.
Well, and I thought about, like they say that when you're planning a vacation, you almost get as much of a high, kind of emotionally about the planning and leading up to, and then, of course, you actually take it. But this all kind of, looking forward to our life getting back to normal, there's something to be said for that.
That's exactly it.
So, what are you expecting, though, for 2021? Listen, you run a company. You've got to be thinking. It's a global company, and I'm sure all of the heads around the world, as you said, you're responsible for your region and your area, but I'm sure there's conversations going on. What are your expectations for what 2021 looks like? Is it that we start to see maybe travel open in some parts of the world more quickly or first, or in other parts that take longer? What are your expectations?
Yeah, so our Samsonite business is always correlated very closely to the total travel industry. So whether that is hotel occupancy or airline statistics such as passenger enplanements, even the government publishes TSA information that shows the flow through of travelers through airports. And this year, it was at a low of 96% down versus last year. We're now down about 55% versus last year. So there have been improvements, and certainly not where we'd like it to be, but considering where it was, we're very optimistic. We do believe the vaccinations certainly are going to help, and it really is just going to take some time for consumer psyche to shift and change and feel comfortable traveling again. But we do know we've been through it before. I am super confident that we've weathered, whether it's been 9/11, certainly a little bit different circumstances, or the financial crisis. We've always rebounded. The travel industry has rebounded, and we actually come out even stronger on the other side. So I think we're not long from that time. The exact timing is somewhat questionable,
Right.
but we're certainly all excited to see that rebound back.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And I also do wonder, though, like we've heard from a lot of folks in the tourism industry, the hospitality industry, that it's going to take a while, especially for business travel, which I assume is a big part of your business as well, that may take a longer time just because, companies have seen, oh, wait, you don't necessarily have to hop on a plane for that meeting. You can actually very well do a virtual meeting and it can be productive. So I wonder what your expectations are specifically for the business travel segment and how that impacts you guys.
Yeah, as businesses continue to monitor expenses and look at business recovery, I imagine that might be a little bit slower and leisure traveler might start off faster. But then again, there's nothing like in business. We here at Samsonite pride ourselves on the relationships we have throughout our business with our store employees located across the world, offices all around, as well as, very important wholesale customers of ours. And people like social interaction and human interaction. So I think over time that is going to happen. Yes, there will definitely be areas where people will choose to do a virtual. But I do see that coming back, probably not as quickly, but I do not see anything truly taking over that human interaction.
Has there anything that surprised you this whole process, between the pandemic, the shutdown, and, maybe over the summer things started to come back a little bit? Has anything surprised you?
I wouldn't say exactly a surprise, but certainly the consumer pivot to digital and online purchasing has happened and accelerated as we've been hearing. It might have this 1 year, probably we're 3 years ahead now, right? So we have seen that really progress much quicker. Again, I wouldn't necessarily say it's a surprise. I would say maybe the magnitude of that shift was probably a surprise.
Yeah.
And then also we do see the gravitation to buying online, picking up in store. And we aggressively rolled that out to our Samsonite stores and gave consumers the option for that. So I would say that's been a surprise because we definitely see consumers using that service a lot more than we initially expected.
Having said that, how do you view competition like away? And I'll be honest with you, I was talking in the newsroom and you guys were one of our guests, and a member of a younger generation was like, listen, I look at everybody who's my age and they all have away bags, and Amazon is now making their own version of an away bag, a cheaper version. And younger consumers seem to be more targeting that. How are you looking at that? And what are you looking to embrace maybe a younger consumer?
Yeah, our brand has always embraced younger consumers. Of course, we would like to engage even more younger millennials and consumers. I think we do have a broad base right now, but we can always strengthen that, and that's something that is a key priority for us and will continue to be a focus of ours.
Okay. We're going to leave it on that note. Thank you so much for addressing that and covering so much ground. Really appreciated it. And here's to things getting back to normal in 2021. And hopefully we can check back with you and see how things are going next year. Lynn Berard, she's president of Samsonite North America, joining us on the phone from Massachusetts, but obviously impacted by the shutdown in tourism and hospitality, but interesting to see. And like we've heard from so many different leaders and heads of companies, just again, that pivot to digital and the digitization of how consumers are interacting with brands, how they're purchasing, that is definitely just really stepped up and ramped up in so many different ways as a result of the pandemic. And that is something that many, many expect to continue. All right, we're getting ready for our last 60 minutes of Bloomberg Business Week on this Tuesday. And coming up, we're going to get a check on the world of real estate from Ari Restegar over in Austin. We've talked on air about how it seems like everyone is moving to Austin, Elon Musk, Oracle, and more. So we're going to get into what he is seeing specifically. And then we're going to wrap up on an interesting collaboration when it comes to the diamond industry. So we'll talk about that in our last half hour. You're listening to Bloomberg Business Week on this Tuesday. I'm Carol Masser in our Interactive Brokers studio. This is Bloomberg Radio.